Chapter 247. She was still cautious. She first circled around the crystal coffin to see if there were any inscriptions or something like that. She wanted to know who was inside the coffin. But after circling around twice, she didn't find anything. She stood in front of the crystal coffin for a while and closed her eyes. All the cells in her body were activated to detect the aura around her. The aura around her was very warm and pure. She couldn't sense any danger. Kireen also said, "There's no danger here. There's no evil aura at all. We Kirins are the most sensitive to evil aura. We can sense it even if it's just a little bit." Ning Xuemore tapped the coffin lid with her finger, making a crisp sound. "Little apple, do you think the person inside is a dumpling?" Dumpling? Kireen didn't understand. It's a zombie. Red-eyed, green-eyed, the kind that can strangle all living things to death. Ning Xuemore told him the zombie movies and TV shows she had seen before. "No. Zombies have corpse aura. I can smell it." Kireen's answer was resolute and decisive. Obviously, it knew about zombies. Ning Xuemore was finally relieved. She had just circled around the coffin. There weren't any legendary treasures around the coffin that could deal with zombies. For example, ink bucket golden thread, glutinous rice, cross, etc. This meant that the person inside the crystal coffin wasn't sealed as a zombie. The reason why it didn't rot was probably because the crystal coffin was sealed well and the anti-corrosion measures were in place. She could tell just by looking at the zither inside. The zither was so bright, and even the paint on it was flawless. It could be seen that the anti-corrosion technology was high-end. She was an expert in opening mechanisms, but she circled around the crystal coffin 7 or 8 times and still couldn't find a crack to open it. The coffin lid and the coffin body seemed to be one. They were completely fused together. There wasn't a single crack to be found. Kireen was impatient. "Master, why don't I bite it open?" Although it couldn't use its telekinesis in here, Kireen's body was very strong. Especially its teeth, which were as hard as diamonds. Not to mention crystal, it could even bite a hole in steel. Perhaps because it was a mythical beast, it had been locked underground for more than 1,000 years. Its teeth were still as white as jade, and it didn't have the usual yellowish teeth of a wild beast. Ning Xuemore patted its teeth and signaled it to shut up. This was a cultural relic. Although she couldn't take the crystal coffin away even if it was well preserved, she couldn't bear to destroy such an exquisite cultural relic. Therefore, she rejected Kireen's simple and crude method. Instead, she wandered around and adjusted the angle of the surrounding candles from time to time, allowing their light to reflect on the surface. But no matter which angle it was, the light refracted by the crystal coffin was the same, and there was no flaw in it. Kireen squatted beside her and watched her work. It was a little bored and looked at the thin chains on the crystal coffin. It was not allowed to gnaw on the crystal coffin, but it should be fine for it to gnaw on the thin chains, right? It wanted to grind its teeth. It shook its head and wagged its tail as it walked forward. First, it used its claws to pull at the thin chains. The thin chains collided with each other and made a tinkling sound, like a string of wind chimes ringing in the wind. The sound was so nice. Kireen pulled at the chains one by one, and each chain made a different sound. Some were like the gurgling of a stream, some were like the blowing of the wind, and some were like pearls falling on a jade plate. It was addicted to pulling at the chains. Ning Xuemore listened for a moment and suddenly had an idea. She looked at the chains. Chapter 248. There were a total of 5 chains, and the zither strings in the crystal coffin also had 5 strings. The sound of each chain was like a musical note. Could it be that these chains could also play some kind of music? She let the little Cheline stand to one side first while she tried to fiddle with these crystal chains. She originally knew how to play the guqin, and at this moment, the sound of these fine chains was so heavenly. Unconsciously, she used these fine chains to play an ancient tune called Homecoming Song. The music sounded in the hall. She felt something in her heart, and when she played, she couldn't help but think of her hometown, the friends, and the family she would never see again. This song was originally somewhat sorrowful, and when she played it in such a state of mind, it became even more sorrowful. Each note seemed to be alive as it wandered around the hall, circling around. The surrounding candlelight swayed with the notes, as if they were dancing to the music. When the song ended, Ning Shuemore heard a sobbing sound. She looked up and saw that Karine's big eyes were tearing up, and it was crying like a tearful Cheline. The corner of her mouth twitched. Karine was too emotional. She raised her hand and rubbed its head. "Why are you crying?" Little Cheline said, "I miss my father and mother." Ning Shuemore was speechless. "You haven't seen them? You still miss them?" "I miss them because I haven't seen them. They must be the people who loved Little Apple the most in the world. It's a pity that they died early." "Master, where are your parents?" Ning Shuemore sighed. She was an abandoned child in her previous life. It was said that she was abandoned by the roadside when she was born and was picked up by her adoptive parents. Her adoptive parents were very good to her, and they loved her as if she was their biological daughter. She was also very hardworking, and her IQ was ridiculously high. When she was in school, she skipped grades and went to university at the age of 12. She was chosen by the National Bureau of Intelligence, and they wanted to recruit her to become an agent. But at that time, she was not interested in being an agent. The National Bureau of Intelligence tried to recruit her several times, but she rejected them all. If it wasn't for that accident, she might not have been able to become an agent in this life. And that accident also caused her to lose her only family in the world. While she was studying abroad, her parents were assassinated at home. Her world collapsed in an instant. Later, she found out that her parents were also secret agents who had been assassinated by assassins sent by M country. In order to avenge her parents, she finally agreed to join the National Bureau and began to undergo a series of special agent training. After 5 years of hard work, she finally grew up and gradually became the leader of her group. Of course, she also finally found the killer who killed her parents and avenged her parents. Once you stepped into the Secret Service industry, it was a lifelong commitment. It was impossible to quit halfway. She also had friends, comrades, and subordinates in the Secret Service team. Her relationship with them was like family. It was a pity that he couldn't see them anymore. Speaking of which, it was strange. In those transmigration novels, most of the protagonists had transmigrated by accident, but she had transmigrated in her sleep. When she woke up, she had arrived in another world and could not return. In her previous life, her parents had passed away when she was 12 years old. In this life, her parents had passed away when she was 8 years old. Whether it was in her previous life or in this life, she was a tragic child. She was destined not to grow up under the care of her parents. Her life experience was somewhat similar to Karine's, but she was much luckier than Karine. At least she had tasted the love of a father and a mother. Chapter 249. She had a similar background as Karine, but she was much luckier than Karine. At least, she had experienced the love of her parents and remembered how they looked like. Karine, on the other hand, was much more pitiful. It didn't even know how its parents looked like. She patted Karine's horn again. "My parents passed away a long time ago. We're both in the same boat." Karine immediately rubbed its horn against her body. "Then we'll depend on each other in the future." It suddenly had an epiphany and looked at her with its big eyes. "Master, why don't you be my mother?" Ning Shuemore was speechless. She was shocked. "Little Apple, I'm only 13 years old this year. How about you? You're more than 2,000 years old. Although you look young, you can't just call me your mother. I feel scared when you call me sister." Karine lowered its head. "I know, but I always feel that you look like my mother. I want to be close to you." Ning Shuemore waved her hand. "Little Apple, you're wrong. I'm a pure human. I don't have any Karine blood. I won't look like your mother no matter what. Even in my previous life, my soul doesn't belong to this era. Even if there was a previous life, it would be in our era. I won't be reincarnated as a Karine in this world. My mother isn't a Karine. My father is." Karine argued. "Then what is your mother?" "Karine is a hybrid." "I don't know." Karine shook its head sadly. "I don't know. My people are very secretive about my mother. They only say that she's an evil woman. But I believe that my mother is a good person. She's definitely not a bad person. In the eyes of a child, Parents were naturally the best people. They couldn't tolerate others saying anything bad about them. So Kireen was the same. It would fight with anyone who said anything bad about its mother. It didn't have any playmates in the entire Kireen tribe. In the end, it was chased out. Ning Shuamore understood its feelings very well, so she stroked its horn to comfort it. She looked at the crystal chains again and nodded with a sigh. The person who made this crystal coffin was also an elegant person. I didn't expect that these chains could play music. There are cracks on the coffin lid. She carefully observed the crack. The shape of the crack was like a tree with twigs and leaves. Could it be that the mechanism was on this tree? Ning Shuamore lowered her head to study the tree again. All her attention was on the coffin lid. She didn't notice that the eyelashes of the red-clothed man who had been lying quietly in the coffin fluttered slightly, like the fluttering wings of a butterfly. Ning Shuamore's fingers were caressing the tree, while the red-clothed man's palm was also pressing against the tree. Separated by the nearly transparent coffin lid, the two people's palms overlapped from time to time. Ning Shuamore naturally noticed the pair of hands as well. The fingers on the pair of hands were slender and perfectly curved. Under the contrast of the crystal, they were as sparkling and translucent as mutton fat jade. It was a pair of beautiful hands. In her era, these hands could be used as a hand model. Oh, this person was also very good-looking. He was a standard little fresh meat with picturesque features. It was hard to tell if he was a man or a woman. If Ning Shuamore didn't see his Adam's apple and his tall and straight figure, she would probably think that he was a beauty too. This person must have been a demon who brought disaster to the country when he was alive, right? With such a beautiful appearance, who knew how many young girls' hearts were tied to the corner of his robe? TSK, it's a pity to die here at such a young age. Chapter 250. She looked at the Guqin again, and a thought suddenly came to her mind. She blurted out, could this person be the legendary demon ancestor? Kireen's body trembled. No, it can't be, right? How could the demon ancestor be buried in such a desolate place? This tomb was too simple and crude. Ning Shuamore tried her best to search for information about the demon ancestor in her mind, but the information she saw was pitifully little. This demon ancestor was said to be quite mysterious, and no one knew whether it was a man or a woman. The records about him or her were only a few words, and his or her face was very vague. She only heard that he or she liked luxury, and the place where he or she lived was beautifully decorated. If he or she died, the tomb would definitely be filled with jewelry, and it would not be as simple as it was now. If he or she was buried by an enemy in a hurry, there would definitely not be such a precious Guqin placed beside him or her. Moreover, this crystal coffin was also a priceless item, and the carvings on it were so lifelike. It was not something that could be done overnight. Looking at his gentle and serene face, it did not look like he or she was sealed, but was solemnly buried. If that was the case, the person in the coffin should not be the demon ancestor. She studied the pattern that had just cracked for a long time. She tried several methods, but they were all in vain. Little Cheline was a little impatient. They had already stayed here for no less than 6 hours. It really wanted to go out and breathe some fresh air. Speaking of which, it had not had enough fun yet. It was bored, so it began to wander around the hall, trying to find a hole to go out. But after wandering around for a long time, it could not find any exit. It looked at the thin chains again. Could there be some kind of exit mechanism at the top of the thin chains? With a press of its foot, it leaped into the air and flew towards the top of the dark hall. The top of the hall was very high. Fortunately, Kireen's jumping skill was very high, so it reached the top in a few seconds. The top was a smooth arc, but the chains went through the arc and reached outside. It did not know where they led to. There was no place to stand on the ceiling, so Kireen grabbed the crystal chain with all 4 of its claws. The crystal chain shook and made a series of clanking noises. This chaotic ringing without any rhythm was definitely unpleasant to the ears. The little Cheline was afraid that Ning Shuamore would find it noisy, so it hurriedly bit the crystal chain that made the loudest noise. Bang! With a loud sound, its indestructible teeth bit the crystal chain. It thought that it could break the crystal chain, but it didn't expect that the crystal chain didn't break. Instead, one of its small fangs sank into the crystal chain. It tried to pull out the tooth, but it didn't expect that the tooth would hurt as if it was cut by a knife. It was so painful that it let out a low cry, and then it found a very strange situation. A line of blood flowed down from the crystal chain that was bitten by it. Oh no! Its teeth were bleeding. No, this strange crystal chain was sucking its blood. Little Apple was a water Chileen. Just like other Killins, although it had a lot of water in its body, it didn't have much blood. Chileen blood was very precious. One drop could bring a dead person back to life. Therefore, although Kareen often cried, its tears were not valuable, but it was never willing to bleed. At this moment, it saw the line of blood in the crystal chain meandering down like a snake. It was frightened and couldn't help but shout, "Master! Master!" Ning Shuemore was studying the mechanism tree on the crystal coffin, so she didn't notice what the naughty Kareen was doing. Chapter 251. It jumped up and shook the crystal chain. Lin Sanju thought it was just being naughty and ignored it. Suddenly, Lin Sanju heard Kareen's cry. She looked up and was shocked to see blood flowing down the crystal chain. Lin Sanju jumped up and climbed up the crystal chain in the blink of an eye. Seeing Kareen's appearance, Lin Sanju was both angry and amused. "Why did you bite it? Master, quickly break this damn chain. It's sucking my blood." Kareen's 4 claws were shaking. "Who told you to bite it?" Ning Shuemore patted its head. Kareen was too naughty. She should teach it a lesson first. Needless to say, its teeth were broken when it bit the crystal chain. Lin Sanju didn't expect the crystal chain to be hollow. If blood flowed down, it would definitely flow down. Lin Sanju was not surprised. "Master, it's really sucking my blood. My own blood won't flow out so fast. I can feel it sucking. Boo-hoo, I'm going to die." Kareen cried again. One of its teeth was stuck, so it couldn't speak properly. In fact, Ning Shuemore had already taken out the dagger. Although the crystal chain was also a cultural relic, it was related to Kareen's safety. She couldn't care less about it. Lin Sanju used all her strength to cut the crystal chain with the dagger. Clang! Ning Shuemore's dagger, which contained all her strength, didn't cut the crystal chain. Instead, it bounced back and numbed her entire arm. Crystals were not particularly hard. They would break into several pieces when dropped to the ground, and would shatter upon impact. Ning Shuemore's slash could even cut through steel in an instant, yet she didn't expect that it would be useless against this thin crystal chain. The little Chileen was shaken, causing it to cry out in pain. The blood flowed even faster. Ning Shuemore could only stare blankly as the blood reached the crystal coffin. It seeped into the cracks on the lid and faintly seeped into the palms of the person inside the coffin. This coffin was strained. Or rather, the person in the coffin was strange. Could there be a sealed vampire inside? "Help! Master! I'm going to die." Kareen's body trembled even more, and he could barely hold on to the chains with his limbs. If it continued to bleed like this, it would bleed to death within a quarter of an hour. Ning Shuemore made a prompt decision. "Little Apple, bear with it." She stabbed the knife into Kareen's gums and pried it open. Amidst Kareen's screams, the troublesome tooth was pulled out by her. The moment the tooth left Kareen's mouth, Kareen's bleeding finally stopped. Not a single drop of blood flowed out. "My tooth." Kareen's heart ached as she looked at her tooth embedded in the crystal chain. "If you lose your teeth, they'll grow back. If they don't grow back, I'll get you a fake tooth when I get back. We can't stay here any longer. Let's go." Ning Shuemore patted Kareen's head and jumped down. Kareen didn't dare to delay and jumped down as well. The moment they landed, they heard a cracking sound from the crystal coffin. The tree pattern on the coffin was completely dyed red by Kareen's blood, and the side of the coffin lid suddenly split open. Then, the lid of the coffin slid to the side as if it was pushed by an invisible hand. The red-clothed, black-haired man in the coffin slowly sat up. Did he come back to life? The scales on Kareen's body almost stood up. Ning Shuemore also held the dagger in her hand tightly and was ready to fight. She began to consider if she should pounce on him and stab him. Chapter 252. The man in red slowly opened his eyes. Ning Xuemor's heart skipped a beat. This man's eyeballs were actually a deep jade color, like a jade wave, rippling with light. Finally, you're out. The man stretched his arms, then closed his eyes slightly, as if he was sensing something, and sighed softly. The air outside is so fresh. His voice was like a breeze, like a flowing spring, like a flower gently floating on the water, like the gentle call of a lark in the valley, indescribably gentle and appropriate. We saved you. Kireen opened her mouth to take credit. The man's voice was too gentle and magnetic, making people feel that he was easy to talk to. Oh, really? That's great. The man's eyes finally fell on the woman and the beast. He slowly got up from the coffin, slowly stepped out, his movements graceful like a poem. His red clothes were like the rays of the sun on the horizon. There was no wind in the hall, but his red clothes fluttered with his movements. You will repay us, right? Kireen asked again. Such a man was as warm as the spring breeze in March, making people feel no hostility towards him. Therefore, Kireen's conditions were very smooth. Of course. The man in red smiled like a blooming flower, slowly blooming in the spring breeze. I can let you choose how you want to die. Kireen, its eyes widened. Are you kidding me? We're the ones who saved you. You want to kill us? The man in red's eyes were like spring water as he stared at Kireen. It's because you saved me that I let you make your own choice. You can choose a less painful way to die. Otherwise, why would I talk so much nonsense with you? Kireen, it was going crazy with anger. You repay kindness with ingratitude. You pervert. You want to kill your savior. The man in red stretched out his 10 fingers like spring onions, as if he wanted to pat Kireen's head. Little thing, a savior is meant to be killed. Don't tell me you want her to use this to threaten you. Kireen did not dare to let him hit her. Kireen jumped 3 feet to the side, trying to avoid the man's palm. However, the man did not move, but his arm grew 3 feet out of thin air and hit Kireen's head. Kireen shuddered. Her hand, which looked so tender and soft, was actually as cold as ice. Fortunately, the man only patted Kireen lightly. Apart from the cold, he did not cause any other harm to Kireen. However, what he said at the end made Kireen's worldview crumble. It arched its body and assumed an attacking posture. I won't let you kill us. It's not certain who will kill who. It bared its fangs threateningly, and all the scales on its body stood up. Oh, looks like you've chosen to fight to the death. Good, you have some backbone. The red-robed man smiled, and his 10 fingers slowly curled. Are you the demon ancestor? Ning Xuemor finally spoke. Her voice was indifferent and cold, as if she was not surprised that he would repay kindness with ingratitude. The red-robed man's gaze finally fell on Ning Xuemor, and he sized her up. Your dying wish is to know who I am. Ning Xuemor smiled slightly. I think you don't know who you are either. Her gaze swept across the crystal coffin. The crystal coffin was still intact, but one side of the coffin lid had been lifted. It looked a little like a damaged piece of art. Chapter 253. A dark light flashed across the man's eyes. Why do you think so? His eyes became even more focused, like sparkling waves that could drown a person in them. Ning Xuemor smiled lazily. Then can you tell me who you are? I am. The man in red choked slightly, then smiled. I was almost tricked by a little girl like you. Why should I tell you who I am? His eyes turned again. However, if this is your dying request, I can tell you. Ning Xuemor shook her head. I have no interest in who you are. That's a pity. The man shook his head. Then I'll have to let you choose how you want to die. Although we saved you, we don't need you to repay us. We can mind our own business and pretend that we don't know each other. How about that? Ning Xuemor stated her request. This man was obviously not an ordinary person. Although he had a smile on his face, the powerful aura that he exuded was extremely shocking. At first glance, it was obvious that he was a ruthless character who could kill millions of soldiers with a smile. It was obviously not wise to go against such a person, so Ning Xuemor began to retreat in order to advance. No. The man shook his head. Then you'll break my vow. What vow? Ning Xuemor began to have a bad feeling. The man in red slowly walked in front of the crystal coffin, and his slender fingers gently touched the lid of the coffin. "All right, in order to let you know when you die, I'll tell you. I've been trapped in this crystal coffin for at least 2,000 years. When I found out that I was trapped in here, I made a promise in my heart that if anyone saved me in the next 1,000 years, I would give them countless treasures and make them the richest person in the world. However, no one came to save me." Ning Xuemore, the man in red, sighed again. 1,000 years passed, so I made another promise. If anyone could save me in the next 1,000 years, not only would I give them countless treasures, I would also give them the most respected position. I would treat them as my master and listen to their orders. Unfortunately, no one came to save me. However, after another 1,000 years, you became angry and swore that if anyone saved you, you would kill that person. You only let him choose how to die. Ning Xuemore continued on his behalf. A hint of surprise flashed through the red-clothed man's eyes. "Not bad. Little girl, you're really smart. You actually guessed it." Ning Xuemore secretly rolled her eyes. What was so hard to guess? This guy was obviously copying the legend of the magic bottle from a foreign fairy tale. When he was a child, he had only seen the fairy tale as a joke. He had never thought that he would actually meet one after coming to this world. Was it true that fairy tales came from real life? Since you've already guessed it, it saves me a lot of effort. Now, you can choose how you want to die. You should know that I will never go back on my oath. The red-clothed man lazily leaned against the crystal coffin and looked at Ning Xuemore as if he was looking at a dead person. Ning Xuemore was also looking at the crystal coffin. She couldn't help but curse in her heart. How good would it be if this guy was also trapped in a bottle? Then, she would have a chance to trick him into entering the bottle again and seal this scourge forever. Now that he was in a crystal coffin, even if she tricked him into entering the coffin again, she wouldn't be able to seal him again. What should she do? What should she do? She quickly thought of all kinds of ways to escape, but she couldn't think of a perfect plan. Chapter 254. Karine was furious. "This is the first time I've heard of someone making such an oath. However, it won't be easy for you to kill us. We still don't know who will die in whose hands." It charged towards the red-clothed man. Ning Xuemore's heart was startled. The red-clothed man kept talking nonsense without any intention of attacking because he was trying to figure out their real strength. Karine's move had exposed his true strength. They were in trouble. In the time it took for her to think, the red-clothed man didn't dodge the little Chiline's attack. Instead, he lifted his sleeve slightly, and a pale golden light shot out from his palm. It went straight for the little Chiline's head. The moment it got close to the little Chiline, the pale golden light transformed into a sharp sword. Why couldn't she and Karine use their telekinesis, but this man could? It was not fair. Ning Xuemore shouted, "Dodge to the right." At the same time, the dagger in her hand flew out like a bolt of lightning, directly colliding with the pale golden phantom sword. Kai! With a soft sound, Ning Xuemore's indestructible dagger turned into powder and scattered all over the ground. Her dagger! Ning Xuemore furrowed her thin brows in pain. Fortunately, Karine blocked the faint golden sword because of her move. It was able to dodge in time and its head was not cut open. Ning Xuemore's dagger wasn't able to completely block the light golden sword's attack. After the light shattered Ning Xuemore's dagger, it didn't lose any momentum and continued to strike the stone wall where the little Chiline was standing. Boom! With a loud sound, half of the stone wall collapsed and countless rocks rolled down. The sound was shocking. The little Chiline shuddered. If it was not for Ning Xuemore's reminder, the sword would have hit its head. It was afraid that the man did not need to make another move. It would have been cut in half and died here. This man just casually made a move, but it was so powerful. No wonder he was so arrogant and asked them to choose how to die. Could he really be the legendary demon ancestor? Karine took 2 steps back, not daring to attack blindly. It tried to activate the psychokinesis in its body. Damn it! He still couldn't use any of it. It seemed that it and its master were doomed today. If it had known earlier, it wouldn't have urged its master to get that Guqin. Karine was filled with regret. "Little girl, you're quite capable. You were actually able to block my attack." The man looked at Ning Xuemore and smiled elegantly. I'm a little reluctant to kill you. Since you can't bear to, then just don't kill him. Ning Xuemore also smiled. In fact, she was not sure, but on the surface, she remained calm and did not show any signs of fear or nervousness. That won't do. I've always been a man of my word. The red-robed man shook his head. His tone was gentle, as if he was also helpless. So you're saying that you must make a move against us today? Ning Xuemore simply sat down on a large rock and looked at him with a smile. His attitude was even more relaxed and calm, as if he had a card up his sleeve. I'm afraid so. The red-robed man sighed. His eyes turned slightly, looking at her and then at Kirin. I swore to kill the person who saved me. If it's one of you, then I can only kill one of you. Ning Xuemore and Kirin's hearts skipped a beat. The man smiled brightly like a blooming flower. Tell me, who saved me? Chapter 255. Kirin was stunned. It opened its mouth as if it wanted to say something, but Ning Xuemore gently patted its head, signaling it to shut up. The little Chelene was actually obedient. Sure enough, it shut its mouth and stared at Ning Xuemore. Ning Xuemore looked at the red-clothed man. Your Excellency's thoughts are quite sinister. Do you want us to kill each other? Sigh, to think that a little girl like you would see through it. The red-clothed man smiled gently, but I am a man of my word. I can only kill one of you. But the condition is that you have to kill the person who saved me. I can give the one who is left behind countless treasures so that he or she can live a peaceful and comfortable life. This red-clothed man was very vicious. However, this tactic of sowing discord was used so openly that no one could find a reason to refute it even if they wanted to. The little Chelene glanced at Ning Xuemore and inwardly took a deep breath. Suddenly, it stuck out its chest and took 2 steps forward. It was me who saved you. It has nothing to do with my master. Master, come and kill me. Ning Xuemore was stunned. She didn't expect Kirin, who was always afraid of death and loved to cry, to have such courage. The red-clothed man looked up and smiled. What a loyal Kirin. You really made me look at you in a new light. Tell me, how did you save me? Kirin proudly said, it was my blood that seeped into your broken crystal chain. Then, my blood opened the mechanism on the coffin lid. That's why you were able to jump out. Oh, the Kirin's blood is indeed one of the conditions to open my seal. The red-clothed man nodded, but, as far as I know, there is another condition to open the seal. That is, you need to use the heaven locking chain to play a beautiful song. Then, the Kirin's blood will appear on the coffin lid. Was it you who used the chain to play the song? Kirin was stunned. It turned out that it was so troublesome to open the seal, and they had bumped into the right person. It also threw caution to the wind. Yes, it was me who used this broken chain to play the song. I didn't know it had this function. It was the one who messed with the chain to make the song, so it didn't think it was lying. The red-clothed man shook his head and looked at Ning Xuemore. Little girl, what do you think? Ning Xuemore smiled and asked, do you believe what it said? Of course not. The red-clothed man shook his head. And slowly looked at Kirin's claws. Its claws can't play music. Ning Xuemore didn't say anything when the little Chelene jumped up. Nonsense. Who said I can't play it? Do you want me to play one song for you? It leaped up and scurried to the coffin lid, using its small claws to fiddle with the chains. Strangely enough, when the crystal coffin was sealed, each of these chains made a different sound. Now, however, there was a series of clanging sounds. It was purely the sound of crystals hitting each other. The red-clothed man shook his head. Little fool, once the seal is opened, the heaven locking chain won't make any music. He seemed to have compromised. All right. I believe that you were the one who pulled out the song with your little paws. Since you want to die, I can't help it. Then, he looked at Ning Xuemore. Little girl, you can kill it now. Ning Xuemore slowly got up and looked at the red-clothed man. She opened her hands and sighed. Okay, as you wish. But my weapon was destroyed by you. I am empty-handed now. How can I kill it? Chapter 256. The little Chelene didn't expect Ning Shuamore to agree so straightforwardly and was stunned for a moment. The man in red shook his head and said, "Kirine, you are too naive. Humans have always been so cunning. They can sacrifice anyone for themselves, not to mention that you are only her pet. It is natural for her to sacrifice you. Do you feel like a fool now?" Kirine closed its mouth and did not speak again. The man in red glanced at it again and said, "However, if you want to go back on your words, I will give you another chance. As long as you say that she saved me, I will let you go. You don't have to worry about the 10-year contract. As long as you agree to kill her, I will naturally break the contract for you. So, even if she dies, you will not die." This man was obviously good at grasping people's weaknesses. He was very good at using psychological tactics. With just a few words, he could make the other party suspicious of each other and be on guard. If Kirine's mind was slightly weaker, it would be instigated to turn against Ning Shuamore. This was the man in red's goal. He liked to see partners who had been through life and death together become enemies. When the man in red was talking to Kirine, Ning Shuamore did not say anything. She only listened with a smile. Kirine looked at Ning Shuamore, who was smiling at it. Ning Shuamore's warm smile comforted it for no reason. It reminded it of its mother for no reason. It made up its mind and raised its head again. It shouted at the man in red, "You don't have to talk nonsense. It was done by young master. It was done by young master. Although I regret saving you now, I will take responsibility for what I did. I will not implicate master." "Stupid." The man in red spat out 2 words. A pale golden light flashed in his palm and a long sword instantly formed. "You can use this sword to kill it." He raised his hand and the sword fell into Ning Shuamore's palm. The sword was unexpectedly heavy. Ning Shuamore staggered and almost fell under the weight of the sword. She hurriedly used the tip of her sword to prop herself up. A trace of disdain flashed through the red-clothed man's eyes. It seemed that this human girl didn't have much ability. She was suppressed to this extent by a single sword. His sword weighed at least 50 kilograms. Ning Shuamore had to lift it twice before she could barely lift it. She flicked the blade of the sword with her finger. The sword buzzed, and the air in the hall seemed to vibrate. "Good sword," Ning Shuamore praised. She raised her head and asked the man, "If I kill it, will you really let me go?" "Of course." The man smiled, but there was a hint of mockery in his smile. "Although you humans like to go back on your words, we won't." "Then are you a devil or a demon?" Ning Shuamore raised her head and asked. "That's none of your business." The red-robed man's face darkened. "If you want to make a move, then make it quick. I hate dawdling people the most." Ning Shuamore sighed and looked at Kirine. "Little Apple, I'm sorry. I have to kill you today. However, on account of your loyalty to me, I can let you die in a place closer to your favorite zither." She approached Kirine step by step. Kirine subconsciously stepped back toward the crystal coffin. The red-clothed man crossed his arms and leaned against the crystal coffin. A trace of passion flashed through his eyes. His favorite scene of killing each other was about to happen. "Little Apple, watch out for my sword," Ning Shuamore shouted. She raised her sword and stabbed it toward Kirine's chest. Chapter 257. Kirine subconsciously retreated to the left. Suddenly, it pounced towards the red-clothed man who was standing on its left with his arms crossed. The sword in Ning Shuamore's hand was also like a shooting star. It turned in the middle and directly flew towards the red-clothed man's chest. Her movements were very skillful, without any of the sluggishness she had shown earlier. Sharp, straightforward, crafty, and as fast as lightning. Even the best sword-wielding expert would not be able to pull off such a move. The red-clothed man's face slightly changed when he was suddenly attacked. He obviously did not expect that this human and beast would dare to play tricks under his nose. Kirine's claw was aimed at his lower body, while Ning Shuamore's attack was aimed at his upper body. In the blink of an eye, all of his escape routes had been sealed off by this human and beast. He really was a character. His body spun around, and 2 snow-white fingers shot out like lightning towards the treasured sword that was rushing towards him. Ning Shuamore's thunderous attack was actually easily neutralized by him. The light golden sword was caught by him midway and stopped abruptly. At the same time, he took advantage of the situation and kicked out, aiming at Kirin's nose. Who would have thought that Kirin's pounce was also a feint? Before it could reach the red-clothed man, its body rolled midway and avoided the red-clothed man's fatal kick. The red-clothed man waved his sleeve and held the light golden sword's hilt again. He sneered, "You want to scheme against me with just the two of you." Speaking up to this point, he suddenly paused. He subconsciously looked at his palm that was suddenly stinging with pain. Only then did he discover that there was a fine needle embedded in the hilt of his sword. The needle was extremely thin, but it was shining with a blue luster. Obviously, it was highly toxic. Dark green beads of blood were seeping out of his jade-white palm. He was poisoned. This sword originally belonged to him. People did not have much vigilance when it came to things that originally belonged to them. He really did not expect that this sword would be poisoned by Ning Xuemore when it was in her hand for just a moment. He actually had his suspicions that Ning Xuemore was hiding her strength when she was almost pressed down by the sword. She was deliberately showing it to him to lower his guard. But this little girl was really too young. She was only 11 or 12 years old and was also the most lowly human. She would not take the risk to play tricks when she had a chance to live. Although the red-clothed man had his suspicions, he did not have his guard up. He felt that even if this girl suddenly attacked him, with his skills, he would be able to block it. He could even turn the situation around in an instant and kill this girl. What he really did not expect was that this girl did not want to use a sword to hurt him but using poison. What was even worse was that she still had a trick up her sleeve. And it was this last trick of hers that made his body suddenly stop. He did not dare to take another step forward. He only narrowed his eyes at the girl standing in the crystal coffin and asked, "What are you doing?" Ning Xuemore also looked at him with a smile. The legendary black wave zither was held in her left arm. Her right hand was like a knife that was placed on the zither's strings. "What do you think?" "What would I do?" This little girl was even more cunning than a little fox. Her 3 moves were all linked together. Even an experienced person like him had fallen into her trap. The red-clothed man lowered his sleeves and looked at Ning Xuemore with a faint flicker in his eyes. "You really are very smart. You actually made me fall into your trap." Chapter 258. However, your poison can only be used on ordinary people. It's not enough to deal with me. As he spoke, dark green blood droplets continuously dripped down from his sleeves. The blood droplets were dark green at first, but after a while, the color of the blood droplets became lighter and lighter. Gradually, the dark green color faded and returned to its original bright red color. It was obvious that although the man was poisoned, he had already forced the poison out of his body in the blink of an eye. Ning Xuemore's eyebrows slightly jumped as she lightly smiled. "I originally didn't plan to poison you to death." However, in her heart, she cursed. Her poison needle could even take down a dinosaur, but she didn't expect that it would be useless against this red-clothed pervert. The red-clothed man forced the poison out of his body in the blink of an eye. He began to move forward step by step. "Then what are you planning to do?" "Stop." Ning Xuemore blinked her eyes and pressed her palm on the zither. The zither's strings buzzed and made an ear-piercing sound as if it couldn't bear the burden. The man suddenly stopped and pursed his lips. "If you dare to hurt it, I will immediately cut you into pieces." Then obediently step back another 8 steps. "Let's have a good talk." Ning Xuemore's palm didn't leave the zither's strings. She secretly sighed in relief. This red-clothed pervert really cared about this zither. She had made the right move. The red-clothed man was also straightforward. His body moved back 8 steps like flowing water. Sure enough, he moved back 8 steps. "What do you want to talk to me about?" "Let go of the zither first." Ning Xuemore gently raised her palm and no longer pressed on the zither's strings. However, she didn't move her hand away. She just pressed it lightly. "Let's talk about the conditions again. Don't play tricks. You have already seen the power of my sword. Maybe it can't kill you, but it's more than enough to destroy this zither." The red-clothed man received her attack just now. He knew that the little girl was not lying. The little girl's power was much stronger than he expected. It was simply beyond his expectations. He slightly lowered his eyes and suddenly asked, "If your power is not psychokinesis, then what is it?" Ning Xuemore curled her lips, no comment. Some things were more mysterious, the more scruples people would have. Naturally, it was better to keep her secret. What a cunning girl. The man in red didn't pursue the matter any further. He just looked at her and said, "Little girl, you're very smart. I admire you." His pair of dark green eyes seemed to be sparkling. When he looked at her like this, she felt as if she was surrounded by his gentle gaze. Kireen had been standing beside Ning Xuemore the whole time. It was also staring at the man in red, fearing that he would make trouble for them. At this moment, when its eyes met with the man's, its mind suddenly went blank, and its body swayed. Ning Xuemore's foot directly stepped on one of its front paws. Kireen felt refreshed from the pain. It glared at the man and said, "Hypnosis. Despicable." He no longer dared to look into the eyes of the red-clothed man. The red-clothed man raised his eyebrows slightly as a trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. His eyes were born with the ability to hypnotize people. Thousands of years ago, countless people had been hypnotized by him and died in his hands. Who would have thought that this little girl was not affected by his hypnosis at all and even had the strength to kick her companion awake? This little girl was not simple at all. "Why are you not affected by my hypnosis?" The red-clothed man immediately asked the question in his mind. Ning Xuemore had dimples on her cheeks. This time, she simply didn't answer. She just smiled. Chapter 259. No comment again. The man in red looked at her. "You're so smart." Ning Xuemore praised him. Of course, she wouldn't tell him that she was a secret agent and had been trained to resist hypnotism. The man in red was speechless. This little girl's words were watertight. Moreover, all of her energy had been focused on the zither. As long as he made the slightest move, he believed that with this little girl's ability, she would definitely be able to destroy the zither before he killed her. This little girl had really grasped his weakness. He sighed. "Okay, what do you want to talk to me about?" "You want me to let you go?" Ning Xuemore smiled. "You're quite smart. It's easy to talk to smart people. However, you're only half right. I have other conditions. If you don't agree, I'll die with your zither." The man in red secretly gritted his teeth. "What other conditions do you have? Tell me all of them." Ning Xuemore was also very straightforward. Her conditions were very simple and very practical. First, you must truly release the two of us. Not a single hair can be missing. Second, you have to open a path to the outside and send us back to the surface. Third, you have to swear that you'll never harm us in this life. If you break your promise, you'll be locked in the crystal coffin for another 20,000 years. The people in this world seemed to value oaths a lot, so she simply said the most vicious thing. The man in red was speechless. The elegant smile on his face finally disappeared. "Little girl, you're too greedy. Aren't you afraid that if you force me into a corner, I'll use this zither to kill you?" Ning Xuemore pursed her lips. "Oh, I'm so scared. I'm really scared that my soul will be destroyed. However, if you don't make this promise, you'll still harm us when we return to the surface. At that time, I'll still die. Instead of dying a miserable death, it's better to have this Blackwave zither as a companion now. It's not too bad to be destroyed together with the divine artifact." She plucked a string with her little finger and plucked it. The sound was like splitting silk. She controlled her strength just right. If she used a little more strength, the string would break. If he didn't use enough strength, he wouldn't be able to achieve such a shocking effect. The little Cheline was startled by this sudden sound and shook its head. The red-clothed man's expression changed. His heartstrings seemed to have been plucked by Ning Xuemore. He clenched his fists again. "You." The smile on Ning Xuemore's face disappeared. She said coldly, "My patience is limited. I'll count to 3. If you still don't agree, I can only live and die with this chain. 1. The red-clothed man's expression changed several times. He was actually being threatened by a little girl. In the end, he didn't dare to take the risk. He took a deep breath and said, "All right, I agree." Ning Xuemore didn't buy it. "Then swear it first." The red-clothed man could only swear according to her oath. After that, he gritted his teeth and looked at Ning Xuemore. Now you can rest assured, right? Give it back to me. Ning Xuemore smiled sweetly at him. You're a straightforward person. I like it. You can open the passage to the surface and send us up. Then, it'll be perfect. This little girl really didn't want to be taken advantage of. The red-clothed man was so angry that his teeth itched. However, there was nothing he could do. He waved his sleeve and a wave of pale golden light hit the top of the hall. Chapter 260. Rumble. It was as if the heavens and the earth were falling apart, and a huge hole appeared in the ceiling of the hall. The ceiling was originally filled with rocks, but under the effect of the golden light, the rocks pushed each other to the sides, and the hole extended upwards layer by layer like a whirlpool. A quarter of an hour later, the ceiling suddenly lit up, and the long-awaited sunlight was revealed. At this moment, it was obviously night outside. Looking up from the hole, they saw a dark blue sky with a few stars shining in the sky. Kareen suddenly shouted, "Master, my telekinesis has recovered." His voice was full of excitement. Ning Xuemore nodded. She also felt that the telekinesis in her body had returned, and it was flowing slowly in her blood. Needless to say, there was a special magnetic field in this enclosed space. This magnetic field prevented outsiders like her and Kareen from using their telekinesis, but it did not hinder the man in red. It seemed like the person who sealed the red-robed man here was quite nice to him. Who was the one who sealed you in this coffin? Ning Xuemore suddenly asked him. The man in red glanced at her and gave her an ambiguous answer. Why don't you take a guess? How could she guess? She did not know the history of 2,000 years ago. She smiled. Actually, the person who sealed you was quite nice to you. He did not want to kill you completely. The man in red froze, and his eyes flickered. How did you know? I guessed. Ning Xuemore answered straightforwardly. She used her finger to point at the crystal chains. These hollow chains lead to the ground, right? It is these chains that suck the flesh and blood of passing animals on the ground, and then flow back to your body, so that you will not starve to death without eating for thousands of years. She had already seen the skeleton of the demon tiger above, and it was right next to these chains. At that time, these chains did not appear on the ground because of a special spell. Now, the hole opened from the inside, and it happened to be right next to the chains. Therefore, Ning Xuemore immediately deduced the real purpose of these chains after a glance. She also knew why the demon tiger was sucked dry in such a short time. The man in red's curly eyelashes trembled, and his pale lips slightly pursed. He looked at his palms, which were pale pink, and it was no different from thousands of years ago. He sighed faintly. Maybe you are right. She does have some feelings for me. But that's not what I want. His handsome face showed a touch of bleakness and sadness. Him? Or her? Is the person who sealed you a man or a woman? Ning Xuemore was curious. The man in red was as elegant as a poem, and he was sinister and vicious. He always smiled, and his true emotions were not exposed. It was rare to see him with such a sad expression. This aroused Ning Xuemore's curiosity, and she could not help asking. The man in red's face, and then he smiled. Are you curious? Or do you want to find her and ask her to seal me again? Ning Xuemore yawned. You think too much. I have never heard of anyone who has lived for more than 2,000 years, except for the God Emperor of this continent. She suddenly looked him up and down. You were not sealed by the God Emperor, were you? The God Emperor? The man in red raised his eyebrows. What is he? Chapter 261. Ning Xuemore was speechless. From the man's words, she could infer that the one who sealed him was not the Di Zun. Could there be someone even older than the Di Zun? You've never heard of the Di Zun? Ning Xuemore asked tentatively. Who is he? Should I have heard of him? The man in red asked back. Ning Xuemore's heart skipped a beat. The man in red had been sealed here for more than 2,000 years, so he did not know about the famous people in the outside world. In other words, the Di Zun did not exist when the man in red walked outside more than 2,000 years ago. So, the Di Zun was at most 2,000 years old. Compared to the Avildor in red, he could only be regarded as a rising star. He is the most powerful person in the continent now. He is worshipped as a god by the people of various countries. Ning Shuamore explained the Di Zun in a few words. The man in red did not care. He smiled and said, I didn't expect you humans to cultivate to the heaven realm. Interesting. I'll go and meet him when I have time. Let's see how many moves this junior can withstand. Ning Shuamore coughed. She did not expect to find a strong opponent for the Di Zun with just a few words. However, the Di Zun had been in a high position for too long. It was often said that it was lonely at the top. Just like Dugu Chobai, he could not find an opponent for many years. How lonely must his life be? Now that she had found an opponent for him, maybe it would add some color to his lonely life and make his life more meaningful. However, what if this Avildor in red was more powerful than the Di Zun? This guy looked very gentle, but in fact, he was a cruel and merciless scourge. Would he bring a rain of blood to this world? Then, she would have committed a great sin. Who was the one who sealed him away back then? She had never heard of anyone older than the Di Zun. Could it be a hermit from somewhere? Ning Shuamore felt that there must be many unknown hermits in this world. It was just like the Jianghu that she was familiar with in her time. Some people liked to be high profile and became heroes or gang leaders. There were also people who liked to be low-key and had real martial arts but never showed it in front of others. They were unknown in the Jianghu. For example, the sweeping monk in Demigods and Semidevils. Forget it. Things had already developed to this point. It was useless for her to regret. She could only take one step at a time. It's fate that we've conversed for so long. May I know your name? Ning Shuamore wanted to find out his name so that she could go back and check his information. The red-clothed man raised his eyebrows and smiled gently, but his words were poisonous. Little girl, do you think you are qualified to know my name? It was obvious that he did not put Ning Shuamore, a little human, in his eyes. Arrogant Avildor. Ning Shuamore didn't want to talk nonsense with him anymore. She patted Kareen's shoulder and said, Little apple, let's go up. Then she jumped onto Kareen's back. Leave the black wave zither behind. The red-clothed man said coldly. I'll return it to you when we go up. Ning Shuamore hugged the zither even tighter. Although the red-clothed Avildor had made a vow, Ning Shuamore was still not at ease until she returned to the surface. If she returned the zither now, who knew if he would cause trouble again? Little girl, you're very cautious. I hope you won't regret your decision after you go up. The red-clothed man smiled mysteriously. He crossed his arms and stood to the side, giving way to the passage. Do you want me to send you up, or do you want to go up by yourselves? Chapter 262. Let's go up by ourselves. Kareen interrupted. Now that it had recovered its psychokinesis, it would not take much effort to get out of the cave. Kareen stomped on the ground with its 4 hooves and jumped up 30 to 40 feet high. When it was about to run out of energy, it kicked off the stone wall and jumped up a few more feet. The man in red had no intention of playing tricks. He crossed his arms and said, Be careful. It's okay if you fall to your deaths, but don't break my guqin. What a freak. Ning Shuamore wanted to smash the guqin in her arms on his head. She smiled on Kareen's back. Then you must bless us so that we don't fall. If I fall, I will definitely use this guqin as a cushion. Ning Shuamore did not expect that she would be ambushed after she escaped from the strange cave safely with Kareen on her back. This ambush was not launched by the red-clothed man, but came from all directions. She and the little Cheline had just landed on the ground, but before they could even stand firm, they heard a whistling sound. Following that, 2 rays of light and a type of magic tool came crashing down on her. Ning Shuamore was gobsmacked. Right now, apart from the zither, she didn't have any other weapon that could block the attacks. She could only turn around and hide under the little Cheline's belly, avoiding the attacks of those magic tools. Little Cheline was suddenly attacked and was startled. It reacted quickly and immediately opened its mouth to spit out a green drizzling water wall to protect its body. 2 of those attacking rays and magic tools smashed into the water wall, and the little Cheline dodged the last one with lightning speed. The water wall swayed, and even the little Chaline's body swayed along with it. It was very obvious that the power of those two rays of light wasn't small, causing the little Chaline to feel somewhat strained. The water wall shook and disappeared, revealing the figures of a man and a beast. Kirine. Kirine. It's really Kirine, someone shouted in surprise and disbelief. Following the voice, 3 figures flew over from 3 directions and surrounded Ning Xuemore and Kirine. Ning Xuemore jumped up from under Kirine's stomach and finally saw the 3 people who ambushed her. Her heart skipped a beat. She recognized one of them. One of them was wearing white clothes and a white skirt. She was beautiful and cold. She was the disciple of Bright Reverence religion, Zhongru Shuang. The other 2 were wearing white robes with bird feathers embroidered on their collars. They were obviously disciples of Bright Reverence religion. These 3 people were 2 men and 1 woman. The man was handsome and free and easy while the woman was as beautiful as a flower. It seemed the rumors were true. Bright Reverence cult and Sun Moon sect were similar. Not only were their disciples' martial arts high, they were also outstanding in appearance. Any one of them would be enough to attract the eye. Zhongru Shuang also recognized Ning Xuemore. Her beautiful face changed and she said, "Eldest senior brother, third senior brother, it was this stinky girl who killed our junior brothers and junior sisters. If we hadn't been poisoned by this stinky girl, our junior brothers and junior sisters wouldn't have died under the claws of the flying dragon centipede on the 6th peak." Ning Xuemore's heart sank. No wonder she didn't see the other 3 people. They were already dead. She pursed her lips and said in a clear voice, "Zhongru Shuang, you plotted against us first. I had no choice but to poison you. It was just to protect myself. Moreover, the poison only hurt a little and made you unable to recover your strength for 2 hours. It wasn't fatal." Chapter 263. You only need to rest here for 6 hours and you will be able to recover. I clearly told you this before I left. You didn't do as I said and lost your lives for no reason. What does that have to do with me? Zhongru Shuang said angrily, "You little witch, you're talking nonsense. How can you be justified when you poisoned us? If you didn't poison us, why would my 3 junior brothers and sisters suddenly lose their strength during the fight? You lost your strength during the fight because you were poisoned by the flying dragon centipede. Don't blame others for your own incompetence." Ning Xuemore replied bluntly. Her eyes narrowed again. Zhongru Shuang, you're just making up excuses to take revenge, aren't you? Have you forgotten the oath you swore? Zhongru Shuang's expression changed slightly. I didn't want to take revenge on you. Then why are you and your senior brothers stopping me now? You can't be here to catch up, right? Ning Xuemore interrupted her coldly. Or have you forgotten the oath you swore? Do you want me to repeat it for you? You've broken the oath. Aren't you afraid that your master will take the oath? Zhongru Shuang was choked by her words. Her face turned green and white. You. Don't talk nonsense. We didn't know you were here. We heard strange noises and came to take a look. We didn't expect a little girl like you to come out of here. She looked at Ning Xuemore suspiciously and finally seemed to realize what was wrong. Oh right, where's number 2? How did you come to the 8th peak by yourself? That's impossible. She turned to her 2 senior brothers and said, "Senior brother, third senior brother, this little girl is a psychic trash. She has a lot of tricks up her sleeves. How did she appear here? With her martial arts, it's impossible for her to get here." Her senior brother looked to be about 27 or 28 years old. He was handsome and calm, and his bearing was quite calm. He glanced at Ning Xuemore and said indifferently, "There must be a demon behind this. This little girl is probably a demon." Her 3rd senior brother immediately said, "That's right. A trash like her can't possibly come to the 8th peak." He was afraid that she was some kind of demon in disguise. It was possible that she had managed to deceive number 2. Now that number 2 was not by her side, perhaps he had already been killed by her. We righteous sects take it upon ourselves to subdue demons and exterminate devils. Since we've encountered such a monster, we have to exterminate it. Zhongru Shuang's eyes lit up. She snorted coldly at Ning Xuemore. That's right. Since he had seen a demon, How could he not get rid of him? Little Demonis, I'm not here to seek revenge from you. I'm here to exterminate the devil and defend the Tao. The three of them finally found a reason to get rid of Ning Xuemore, and it was so open and aboveboard. They didn't want to be polite anymore, and each of them took out their weapons. Ning Xuemore lightly clapped her hands, giving them 3 claps. Not bad. That's right, in order to deal with a defenseless little girl, you guys actually put in so much effort and even came up with such a bunch of nonsensical reasons. It's really been hard on you guys. So, the disciples of Bright Reverence religion are only SOSO. I've learned a lot. She turned her eyes and saw that the man in red had already flown up. At this moment, he was leaning lazily against a big rock. There was a hint of a smile on his lips, and he looked like he was watching a show. It was obvious that he didn't want to get involved. She hugged her zither even tighter, then looked at the three of them and smiled. Are you guys going to attack together? Or are you guys going to take turns to fight? She had seen Zhong Rushuang's abilities. She should have reached the 8th level of the human realm. Chapter 264. Even if she were to fight Zhong Yu one-on-one, she would not be able to defeat her. Moreover, there were also her 2 senior brothers. Their martial arts were definitely not weak. These 2 dared to bring Zhong Rushuang to the 8th peak. Their psychokinesis was definitely at Earth rank level 3 or 4. They might even be much stronger than Ji Yunhuang. Zhong Yu was even less of a match for them. And Karine did not seem to have much ability. At most, it could create a water shield or something. She was afraid that it would not be a match for these 3 people. If she wanted to escape safely, she had to find another way. She was not confident, but she did not show it on the surface. She even smiled as if she had a card up her sleeve. The 3 people did not expect her to be so calm in such a situation. She sat on the Karine's back with a calm demeanor. She looked more like an expert than an expert. That kind of demeanor made the 3 of them shocked. The 3 of them did not think much of Ning Xuemore. Who would really take a good-for-nothing as an opponent? Moreover, the other party was a little girl who had not even reached marriageable age yet. They came up with so many excuses just now because they wanted to label Ning Xuemore as a witch so that they could get rid of her openly and snatch the Karine beside her. In their hearts, they still did not believe that Ning Xuemore had any real ability. Perhaps she was lucky to be able to reach the 8th peak. But now that they saw her full of confidence, they suddenly felt a little uncertain. Perhaps this little girl really did know some kind of witchcraft. Otherwise, why would the divine beast Karine let her sit on it so obediently? How was it possible for her to come here unscathed? Who was the red-robed man behind her? Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. The 3 of them looked at each other and read the words end this quickly in each other's eyes. The senior brother sneered, "There's no need to pay attention to so much when dealing with evil. You witch look young, but you might be an old monster who has lived for thousands of years. Second brother, Sister Shuang, let's go together." At this moment, the 3 of them had a tacit understanding and thought of the same thing. They looked at each other and immediately made their moves. 3 different colored lights swept towards Ning Xuemore. The 3 of them cooperated very well. One of them attacked Ning Xuemore's lower body, one attacked her chest, and the last one attacked her head. Each ray of light transformed into more than 10 rays of light in the air. As the light flashed, they had already enveloped Ning Xuemore's entire body. Ning Xuemore screamed and swung the zither in her arms to block the balls of light. Damn it! His Guqin. The red-clothed man who had been watching the show cursed in a low voice. His figure flashed, and he waved his sleeve. A light golden sword instantly took shape, and spun in front of Ning Xuemore like a whirlwind. All the light balls that were approaching Ning Xuemore were shattered into pieces. Damned brat, you ruined my zither. I want your life. The red-clothed man's tone was unkind as he stared at Ning Xuemore's fingers. This brat's 5 fingers were hooked onto the strings of the zither. As long as she exerted a little force, these strings would break. Because he cared too much, he was even more worried and did not dare to snatch the zither. The 3 of them were shocked. Although they had noticed the red-clothed man since a long time ago, it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. As long as the red-clothed man didn't interfere in this dispute, they didn't intend to pay attention to him for the time being. However, they did not expect that the red-clothed man would make a move at the crucial moment. Moreover, his move was so powerful that he broke their combo so easily. "Who are you? Why are you helping this witch?" the senior brother asked in a low voice. Chapter 265. The red-clothed man was too lazy to pay attention to him. His eyes were fixed on the zither. "Stupid girl, this zither is used to play, not as a weapon. It can't withstand any psychokinesis attacks. Take your fingers away. Don't touch the strings, they'll break." Ning Xuemo's mouth twitched. "Isn't it the Blackwave zither? It's an ancient artifact. I thought that if I played it casually, it would automatically release a killer move." "Bullshit." The red-clothed man cursed in anger. "This zither needs a special fingering technique to become a killing weapon. It can kill anyone within 100 li. How could it be as wasteful as you?" The Blackwave zither. As soon as these 3 words entered their ears, the eyes of Zhong Rushuang and the others lit up. They could be considered experienced and knowledgeable. Naturally, they knew about this ancient artifact. Their master, Yi Qingwan, had also been looking for the Blackwave zither. They didn't expect that this artifact would appear here. It really didn't take any effort to obtain it. The 6 eyes of the 3 people were also fixed on the zither. They wanted nothing more than to snatch it. Ning Xuemo's eyes turned. "So it needs a special fingering technique. Looking at you, you don't know how to play it, right? Naturally, you won't teach it to me. Then this zither is useless to me." She suddenly seemed to notice something. She glanced to the left of the red-clothed man. Her face revealed surprise as she shouted, "Di Zun?" Hearing this shout, Zhong Rushuang and the others were all shocked. They all looked to the left of the red-clothed man. Although the red-clothed man wasn't shocked by the title Di Zun, he had just heard of this title. He knew that he was a powerful person, so he also subconsciously turned his head to look. The moment everyone turned their heads to look, Ning Xuemo laughed. With a wave of her hand, she threw the zither out like a whirlwind. The red-clothed man's ears were alert, and he immediately heard the sound of the zither flying through the air. He abruptly turned his head and saw his treasured zither fly out from his right side, heading straight for Zhong Rushuang's head. Zhong Rushuang was caught off guard. She heard a fierce gust of wind and saw a ball of blue light hurtling towards her. It was too late for her to dodge, so she could only use the sword in her hand to block it. Just as her sword was about to cut into that ball of blue light, a pale golden ball of light suddenly came in and directly collided with her sword light. There was a sound like an explosion. Zhong Rushuang's sword instantly disintegrated into powder. She was also sent flying by the pale golden ball of light. If it wasn't for her eldest senior brother catching her in time, her head would have hit a big rock and turned into a rotten watermelon. After the red-clothed man sent Zhong Rushuang flying with his left palm, he waved his right sleeve. Like a flood dragon sucking in water, it wrapped around the zither. He obviously treasured this zither very much. After his sleeve wrapped around the zither, he shook it a little to dissipate the force of the zither flying out. He didn't want to forcefully pull on the zither and damage its strings. Then, he rolled his sleeve back and wrapped the zither in his arms. That 3rd senior brother saw that the object flying out was a zither. He originally wanted to reach out and snatch it, but the red-clothed man was faster than him. Before he could do anything, the zither flew back into the red-clothed man's arms. He couldn't help but stare blankly. On the other side, eldest senior brother had already steadied himself with Zhong Rushuang in his arms. Chapter 266. Zhong Rushuang's face was deathly pale. The arm that used to hold the sword hurt as if it was broken. She couldn't even lift it. She was still in a state of shock. The blood in her chest surged violently. She wanted to speak, but when she opened her mouth, she spat out a mouthful of blood. Although the senior caught Zhong Rushuang, his arms were numb from the shock. He almost couldn't hold his junior sister's delicate body. He took 3 or 4 steps back before he could steady himself. When he saw Zhong Rushuang spit out blood, he was shocked. "Little sister Shuang, are you okay?" I'm fine. Where's that brat? Zhong Rushuang was almost gnashing her teeth. Only then did the other two remember Ning Xuemore, who had caused this series of unforeseen events. They looked around, but there was no trace of that brat. There was no need to ask. Ning Xuemore had taken advantage of the moment when they were fighting over the zither and the person. She had taken the opportunity to escape at the most chaotic moment. What a little fox. The man in red naturally also noticed that Ning Xuemore had run away. He shook his head. It wasn't clear whether his tone was praise or helplessness. His zither had returned to his arms intact, so he wasn't in a bad mood. There was even a faint smile at the corner of his lips. Although he looked down on humans, he still admired Ning Xuemore, who was as cunning as a fox and full of wisdom. What a smart little girl. She actually used such a trick to escape and quietly pulled him, who was just watching the show, in. He looked down and carefully examined the zither in his arms. He took out a snow-white silk handkerchief from somewhere and wiped the strings and body of the zither. He wiped it very carefully and meticulously. His expression was focused and serious, as if he was wiping a fragile blue and white porcelain. Damn it. We actually let that brat run away just like that. Zhong Rushuang stomped her feet. We'll find her. The senior didn't take it to heart. When Ning Xuemore made a move just now, he knew that her martial arts weren't high. She was only at level 2 or 3 of psychokinesis. In his eyes, she wasn't even a rookie. If they wanted to find such a girl in the future, it would be as easy as blowing off dust. Since she had run away, then forget it. They could talk about it later. The most important thing now was this Blackwave zither. This was their top priority right now. His gaze descended onto the red-clothed man. Through that exchange of blows, he'd already noticed that this man before him wasn't simple at all. He was not someone who could be easily dealt with. However, if the three of them joined forces and used their special magic tools, they should have a chance of winning. Who are you? Eldest senior brother asked, secretly sending a secret signal to his junior brothers and sisters. The two of them understood and quietly moved a few steps, seizing the advantageous terrain. The man's features were elegant. He was clearly dressed in a fiery red robe, but his entire person was as gentle as water. Under the starlight, his temperament was as enchanting as the moonlight. He was still wiping the zither with his head lowered, as if he didn't notice that the three of them had already surrounded him. Hearing the question of the eldest senior brother, he didn't even raise his head. I don't want to tell you. Why? You don't dare. Yang Rushuang added. Because it's useless. The man in red continued to wipe his zither slowly. This argument was quite fresh and also quite choking. Third senior brother sneered. Why do you say that? A real man doesn't change his name or his surname. What's the point of hiding like this? Could it be that your name is shameful? Chapter 267. The red-clothed man finally raised his head and smiled gently. Under the starlight, his eyes were gentler than water ripples. The reason is very simple. Because you are going to die. The dead don't need to know other people's names. The three people, they looked at each other, their expressions more alert. The eldest senior brother said coldly, Your Excellency's words are too harsh. Do you think you can kill us with your own strength? Besides, we have no grievances with Your Excellency. Your Excellency's ruthless words are too unreasonable. The red-clothed man's eyes swept over them. Aren't you surrounding me and talking nonsense because you want to snatch my zither? He smiled again. Anyone who wants my zither has only one word, death. Do you guys understand my explanation? He stood there, his robe fluttering in the wind. His expression was not like he was talking about life and death, but more like he was talking about the weather. This kind of attitude, this kind of bearing, if one did not have absolute confidence, they would not be able to do it. Although the three of them looked young, in terms of actual age, they could be said to be old foxes in the Jianghu. At this moment, seeing this man's attitude, their hearts were beating wildly. It was as if they saw the Grim Reaper stretching out his butcher's knife. They suddenly regretted. Although the divine weapon was important, their lives were naturally more important. The eldest senior brother knew how to conduct himself and immediately said, Your Excellency misunderstood. We did not have any extravagant thoughts about this zither. Oh, then why are you surrounding me? The red-clothed man seemed to be very easy to talk to. It's like this. We were passing by and heard strange sounds. We were afraid that evil spirits would appear and harm our righteous friends, so we came to take a look. We just happened to see that witch coming out of this cave. Brother, you followed closely behind. We thought you were together, so we wanted to confirm it with you. So this zither is your excellency's? That's very good. Your excellency must be a master of music. Coincidentally, my master Master Yi of Bright Reverence is also good at music. If you have the opportunity in the future, you may come to our Bright Reverence as a guest. He was obviously showing weakness and wanted to run away. Of course, at the critical moment, he also revealed his master's identity to make this man have some scruples. After all, Yi Qingwan's reputation of being protective was known by everyone on this continent. Every time they met an expert that they couldn't beat, they would show off their master's name. Usually, the other party would give up, and sometimes even apologize to them. This was like the second generation of some officials or the third generation of power. It didn't matter if they had real ability or not. The key was that they had a father that others couldn't afford to offend. Flashing it at the right time was still very useful. On this continent, there were not many people who dared to provoke Yi Qingwan, and even fewer people who did not know her. Unexpectedly, the red-clothed man in front of him was the exception among the exceptions. He glanced at his eldest senior brother and suddenly smiled. His tone was somewhat serious as he said, "She is not a demoness." Eldest senior brother was stunned. He coughed and subconsciously retorted, "How do you know she's not a demoness? Perhaps you were also deceived by her disguise. She can't fool me." The man in red curled his lips. "Because I'm the demon." It was earth-shattering. The three of them were shocked and retreated a few steps. The man crooked his finger at them and smiled even more gently. "Didn't you want to eliminate evil and protect the Tao? Let's do it together." The three of them. Chapter 268. A faint golden light rose from the ground and engulfed the entire rocky slope in an instant. Kirin ran as if it was flying. It ran through the rugged mountain as if it was flat ground. In less than an hour, it ran down the 8th peak, the 7th peak, and headed towards the 6th peak. "Master, you actually used this method to run away. Didn't you say that when enemies meet on a narrow path, the courageous will win?" Kirin didn't understand why Ning Xuemore would run away without a fight. "Little idiot, when enemies meet on a narrow path, the courageous will win. When both sides are equal in strength, or when there is no chance to run away, you will fight for a chance. If the difference in strength is too great, then blindly rushing forward is what a boorish man would do. Other than losing your life for no reason, it's useless. As a person, you have to be flexible in order to live longer." Ning Xuemore took the opportunity to teach Kirin. Although Kirin had lived for 2,000 years, no one had ever taught it these survival skills. Now that it heard it, it felt enlightened. It didn't recognize the wrong master. She was still very reliable at crucial moments. Ever since they established the 10-year contract, she could communicate with it telepathically. This was also the main reason why they could cooperate so well in these two dangerous situations. The little Chilene's current strength was several levels higher than Ning Xuemore's, but when it was together with her, it felt an unprecedented sense of security. It was no longer a lonely beast. It felt good to have companions. Kirin ran over a few mountains. Although it was a little tired, it felt warm in its heart. "Master, you really scared me when you threw the zither out. If that red-clothed Devildor couldn't catch it and broke it, I'm afraid that guy would immediately take your life. When I threw it, I calculated the angle and strength. That red-clothed Devildor treasures the zither so much. It's impossible that he couldn't catch it." Ning Xuemore smiled. She was very good at calculating people's minds. She knew that as long as those people knew that the zither was the Blackwave zither, they would definitely be tempted and have the idea of stealing it. They wouldn't chase after her. As for that red-clothed Devildor, because of his oath, he wouldn't harm her unless there were some special circumstances. This move of hers seemed to be extremely dangerous, but she was actually quite confident. She had perfected this plan of diverting the trouble to someone else. She patted Kirin's shoulder. "All right, you can slow down. We don't have to rush back." Calculating the time, she had been out for 4 days. It was also the 5th day since the ancestor came to the imperial palace. The ancestor should have left by now, right? Ji Yunhuang should have been released from the ice palace by now. He should have heard about his imperial father's marriage by now, right? What would he do? Ning Xuemore had a good impression of this genius crown prince who had always helped her. "Those 3 people are really bad. They actually called you a demoness the moment they saw you. You're clearly a real human, and you don't have any demonic aura at all. I can see that their psychokinesis is not low, but their eyesight is really bad. You can't even tell a human from a demon. It's not that they can't tell. They're just looking for a reason to kill me. They actually took a fancy to you." Ning Xuemore patted its shoulder again. A Chilean beast, that was a rarely seen divine beast. Those 3 people being greedy was also within her expectations. "They're so bad. I won't follow them," Kirin snorted. It was still a little worried. "But since they're greedy now, I'm afraid that they won't let it go. Who knows, they might try to find us in the future." Chapter 269. Ning Xuemore's eyelashes curved. "Don't worry, they won't make trouble for us again. The red-clothed Evildor will swiftly finish them off. They won't be able to walk down Tianshu Mountain alive. The red-clothed Evildor does indeed have the strength, but Master, how do you know he will kill them? What if he just beat them back? They suffered a loss at the hands of the red-clothed Evildor. I'm afraid they will turn around and make trouble for us." Ning Xuemore smiled. "Do you think the red-clothed Evildor is a bodhisattva? That guy is very vicious. Once those 3 people have the idea of snatching his zither, it's time for them to die. Besides, he just suffered a loss at our hands, he's in a bad mood, and those people just happened to deliver themselves to his door." Kirin nodded. Master's plan of killing with a borrowed knife was really good, but there was still one thing it did not understand, so it asked, "Master, in fact we didn't have to run away, the red-clothed Evildor treasures his zither so much, you only need to threaten him with the zither, he will definitely help you and send those people away. Isn't that safer?" Ning Xuemore patted Kirin's head. "Not simple, little apple, you can actually think of this plan. You're really smart." Praised, Kirin immediately felt proud, its pair of eyes like crescent moons. Such a smart master is praising it for being smart, but if even it could think of this plan, how could Master not think of it? Why is that? It did not want its master to change the topic, so it asked again, indicating that it was not easy to fool. Ning Xuemore rubbed the space between her eyebrows. The reason why she did that was because she knew that the red-clothed Evildor was not someone who could be easily threatened. Even if she used the zither to threaten him, he would have no choice but to make a move. His heart would definitely be indignant and he would most likely go easy on those people, scaring them away. It would also leave her with a big hidden danger. Taking 10,000 steps back, the red-clothed Evildor, under her coercion, would cleanly destroy those people. The trouble was not over yet. Number 2 had said that Yi Qinghuan knew the soul summoning technique, so she would know the cause of her disciple's death and who the enemy was. Then the matter of her coercing the red-clothed Evildor to kill those 3 people would soon be known by Yi Qinghuan. With that woman's vengeful heart, she would still be the primary target to be hunted down. It could be said that there would be endless trouble in the future. Now that she had used this method to escape, those 3 people would no longer care about her. She was killed by the red-clothed Evildor purely because she wanted to snatch the zither for her master. If Yi Qinghuan wanted to take revenge, she would first look for the red-clothed Evildor. This method was rather dark and not too bright. Ning Xuemore felt that the little Chilean was still a pure and innocent little Chilean. It was better not to let it understand this kind of immoral method. So she patted Kirin's big head and said, "I didn't think of it at the time, so I used a more complicated method. My Kirin is still the smartest. Come on, work hard." Kirin had rarely been praised in his life, and now he was in high spirits again. "Master, do you think the pervert in red will chase after us?" Kirin was more afraid of him. "Don't worry, he won't. He swore not to hurt us, he won't go back on his words. Karine was slightly relieved, then suddenly remembered something. That's right, Master, the people in this world usually make an oath in front of the gods. An oath has a strong restrictive effect on people or immortals, but it has no effect on demons. Demons can only swear in front of the demon ancestor. That red-clothed Evildor is not an immortal, right? When he swore, was it in front of the gods or the demon ancestor? Chapter 270. Ning Xuemo's expression changed slightly. When that guy swore, his first few words were "I swear before God." If he practiced the devil path, this oath would be useless to him. Little thing, why didn't you say so earlier? Ning Xuemo felt a headache coming on. I was locked up for too long, so I forgot. Perhaps after 1,000 years, the pattern of oaths had changed. No matter if it was an immortal or a demon, an oath was binding. Yes, it must be so. Otherwise, that red-clothed pervert would have found trouble with her long ago, and wouldn't have let her go so easily. She felt a faint chill on her back, so she asked Karine to walk faster. She'd better go back to Marquis Jingyuan's mansion first. She had drifted outside for several days, and had been on the brink of death several times. She somewhat missed the big bed and delicious food in the mansion. The pale golden light surged like a tide, and everything in its path turned into powder. Zhong Rushuang and the other two tried their best to dodge, but they couldn't. A moment later, the three of them were trapped in the pale golden light. At the most critical moment, eldest senior brother opened the most precious treasure of the sect, the Great Wisdom Barrier. According to legend, this was something invented by the venerable sovereign, and was a magic treasure for the disciples to protect themselves. Yi Qinghuan had made one under the venerable sovereign's personal guidance, and it could be considered a master-disciple collaboration. It had a very important meaning to Yi Qinghuan, so she had always kept it by her side, and the disciples couldn't even touch it. And the one that eldest senior brother was opening now was made under Yi Qinghuan's guidance. Although its effect wasn't as good as the one Yi Qinghuan kept, because it had half of Yi Qinghuan's magic power, its effect couldn't be underestimated. When this barrier was opened, it could protect one's own people from all external harm. Eldest senior brother had taken many risks in his life, and in the most critical moments, this great wisdom barrier had saved his life several times. Because using this thing would consume a lot of psychokinesis, he wouldn't use it easily, but now he had no other choice. This great wisdom barrier's appearance was a transparent sphere, and the three of them were now protected inside it. The pale golden light outside submerged the whole sphere, and the rustling sound was like silkworms chewing mulberry leaves. Countless large stones were silently shattered in front of their eyes, and turned into flying dust. The power of this move released by the red-clothed man was really too great. It was simply unimaginable to them. The three of them shrunk into the cover and shivered. They finally understood that they had indeed provoked someone they shouldn't have. This person wasn't someone they could afford to provoke. "Hey, your tortoiseshell is not bad." The red-clothed man curiously stretched out his hand and lightly patted the ball. His hands were slender and perfect, like ivory carvings. When he patted, he seemed to be patting casually. But just this one hit caused the great wisdom barrier to bounce a few times in the faint golden light, letting out an ear-piercing sound. It became thinner bit by bit, like a soap bubble, about to burst at any moment. The faces of Zhong Rushuang and the other two changed drastically. Under the shadow of death, Zhong Rushuang finally collapsed. She screamed from inside, shouting out her life-saving magic weapon that had worked every single time. You can't kill us. You won't have a good ending if you kill us. My master knows the soul summoning technique. If you kill our physical bodies, my master will summon our souls for questioning. Once she finds out that you are the murderer, you will be in big trouble. My master will avenge us and teach you a lesson that will make you wish you were dead. Chapter 271. Who knew how many bright reverent school disciples had said such words to intimidate, but this time, in front of this red-clothed man, it was clearly ineffective. A hint of rumination flashed past his eyes. He reached out a hand and patted that great wisdom barrier that was about to shatter. Hearing you all say this, Wu, I'm actually a bit looking forward to your master's revenge. Originally, I even wanted to scatter your souls together, so as to prevent you all from being an eyesore like flies. But now it seems that no matter what, I have to leave one of your souls alive, or else no one will be able to report to your master. Oh, which one should I leave alive? His expression was like he was picking a chicken in a chicken coop. Zhong Rushuang and the other two's faces could no longer be described as deathly white, they were completely devoid of color. It turned out that there were people in this world who weren't afraid of their master. My father is Li Gang had run into, and he didn't buy it at all. The red-clothed man treated them the same way he treated Ning Xuemore and the little Chelin. He also gave the three of them a choice. Out of the three of them, only one of their souls could be left behind. However, they could decide who to leave behind. In other words, he supported the three's internal strife, and the one who won and survived would be the lucky one. His multiple-choice question made the three brothers and sisters who had originally shared life and death, and worked together to fight against the outside world, instantly become enemies who wanted each other dead. Each of them used their own unique skills. The third brother was the first to be killed by the eldest brother, and his body was kicked out of the Great Wisdom Barrier. This Great Wisdom Barrier was indeed a strange treasure. It was easy to leave, but difficult to enter. As soon as the third brother's body was kicked out, it immediately melted in the faint golden light, not even leaving behind a bone. Eldest brother. Zhong Rushuang's expression was mournful, and her eyes were filled with tears. I know you've always liked me, and you loved me the most among all the brothers and sisters. You once played the flute under my window for an entire night, and you said you would go through water and tread on fire for me without hesitation. The eldest brother seemed to be moved, and the hand holding the sword slowly lowered. Yes, I've always liked you, but you refused to respond to me, eldest senior brother. It's not that I don't want to respond to you. It's just that my telekinesis has yet to break through to the earth rank. I'm ashamed and afraid that I'm not good enough for you. Actually, I've always liked eldest senior brother. Zhong Rushuang stared at the tip of his sword, and her voice became even more sorrowful. Do you have any proof? Eldest senior brother seemed to be in disbelief. Evidence. Zhong Rushuang smiled bitterly. Do you need evidence to like someone? You're saying this at a time like this because you want me to give you the chance to live. Sister Shuang, do you really think I'm stupid? Eldest senior brother, you're wrong. In order to prove my feelings, I've decided to give you this one and only chance. Eldest senior brother, you take care. The tears in Zhong Rushuang's eyes finally rolled down. A crying beauty was always pitiful, not to mention that she was his sweetheart. Eldest senior brother couldn't help but step forward. Little sister Shuang, Zhong Rushuang looked at him with tears in her eyes. Eldest senior brother, I just want you to know how I feel. I'm afraid that if I don't say it now, I won't have another chance. I understand. Little sister Shuang, I'm sorry. Don't say sorry, eldest senior brother. Your telekinesis has already broken through to the Earth rank level 6. Your survival is more useful than ours. Rushuang only has one request now. What request? Tell me. Chapter 272. Eldest brother, can you give me a hug? That way, even if I die, I can smile in the underworld. Okay. The eldest brother opened his arms, waiting for the final hug. Zhong Rushuang cried out and threw herself into his arms. Eldest brother. A pair of lovers tightly hugged each other in the moment of life and death. Then, their bodies suddenly trembled. The tip of a sword protruded from their backs, close to their heart. It turned out that they had taken advantage of this moment to plot against each other and deliver a fatal blow to each other. At the same time, the two people's bodies shook, and at the same time, they reached out with their palms, desperately slapping each other away. The eldest brother's martial arts were clearly much higher than Zhong Rushuang's. His palm directly slapped Zhong Rushuang out of the Great Wisdom Barrier. Zhong Rushuang didn't even have time to cry out before her whole body disappeared in the faint golden light. Zhong Rushuang's sword was stuck in the eldest brother's chest. Because he had dodged at the most critical moment, Zhong Rushuang's sword didn't directly pierce his heart. He wouldn't die for a while. He staggered back a step and sat down with a thump. Slut. You lied to me. The red-clothed man stood not far away, watching this good show of killing each other. A trace of disgust flashed through his eyes. In the face of life and death, love and friendship often couldn't withstand the test. They couldn't even withstand a single blow. Their souls have already been scattered, right? The eldest brother gasped for breath like an ox. Now, he was the only one who survived. If his master knew that he had killed his junior brothers and sisters, he wouldn't let him off. However, this red-clothed demon said that the other two souls would be scattered. That way, his master would never know the truth. He could also cry and complain to his master. Maybe he could reincarnate into a good body. Therefore, the souls of those two people must be scattered. The man in red crossed his arms and looked at him. He didn't answer his question. Suddenly, he smiled and said, "You really are the most vicious and merciless person. No wonder you can live for so long." He changed the topic and said, "Actually, the three of you don't have to die. My martial arts haven't fully recovered. Sending out this golden light is already an arrow at the end of its flight. As long as you work together to support this tortoise shell for a quarter of an hour, I won't be able to do anything to you." As he spoke, the faint golden light surrounding the great wisdom barrier finally completely dissipated, and not a trace of it could be seen. Eldest senior brother. His hand that was holding the sword began to tremble. He wanted to stand up, but he was also heavily injured. At this moment, he could only force himself not to faint. He couldn't do anything else. The great wisdom barrier was originally supported by his telekinesis. At this moment, he was already at the end of his road. Naturally, the great wisdom barrier could no longer support him and shattered with a bang. Eldest senior brother lay there like a dead dog, gasping for breath. The red-clothed man's expression became even more joyful. "Are you regretting it? Can't wait to tear me to shreds." Eldest senior brother could not answer a single word. What was the use of regretting now? There would be no turning back. He panted even harder, and blood began to seep out of the corner of his lips. The red-clothed man slowly walked forward and made a hand gesture to eldest senior brother. Eldest senior brother's body trembled. His arm did not listen to him, and the sword in his hand slowly moved towards his own neck. He wanted to struggle, but he didn't have the strength to do so. Seeing the gleaming sword edge getting closer and closer to his neck, all the hair on his body stood on end. He desperately shouted, You said you would let me go." Chapter 273. Ah, yes. I did say that I would leave your soul behind to inform your master and let your master find me for revenge. The red-clothed man nodded, his voice was still elegant. He turned his head and looked at him. "Will you inform your master?" Did this red-clothed demon want him to inform his master or not? He said that he was already an arrow at the end of its flight. If that was the case, he should not be his master's opponent. The eldest senior brother was at a loss and hesitated for a moment. Is this not easy to answer? The red-clothed man was a little unhappy. If you let me go and spare my life, I swear that I will not report today's matter to my master." The eldest senior brother took the opportunity to make a request. "Then wouldn't your junior brothers and sisters have died in vain? If your master asks, how are you going to answer?" The red-clothed man's eyes were shining. I will say that they died under the claws of the magical beasts on the 9th peak. This is not a good lie. No matter how powerful the magical beasts on the 9th peak are, they will only kill them at most. They will not make their souls scatter. Think of a better one. The red-clothed man was not satisfied with this reason. The eldest senior brother had to think desperately. Finally, he thought of a reliable one. I will say that they died in the hands of the Wind and Cloud Sect's sect leader. The Wind and Cloud Sect's sect leader had always been at odds with their bright reverence school. That sect leader also had the ability to make people's souls scatter. The red-clothed man laughed. "Very good. Say it like that." He pressed his hand down fiercely. The sword in the eldest senior brother's hand directly pierced his own neck. Blood spurted out wildly. His eyes suddenly widened and his body slowly fell down. The red-clothed man raised his hand and gently blew on it. He was afraid that today's matter would set off a reign of terror on the continent. In the future, it seemed that it would not be so boring. He lowered his eyes and looked at the zither in his arms. Suddenly, he faintly sighed and gently wiped it again. With Kirin, the king of beasts, by her side, Ning Shuamore went down the mountain very smoothly. All the magical beasts that smelled Kirin's scent fled at the sight of her. Therefore, she did not encounter any magical beasts on the way. She worked hard for half the night and finally reached the third peak at dawn. The magical beasts on the third peak were obviously much weaker. There were already gentle animals like the magical rabbit. There were many disciples from various sects who came here to train and level up. Ning Shuamore had also encountered a few waves. She didn't want to have any contact with these people, but Kirin's figure was too eye-catching. No matter which group of people came into contact with him, they would scream, "Kirin, heavens, that's a Chileen." Then, a large group of people chased after her. Little Chileen's speed was much faster than these people, leaving them far behind. However, the Chileen beast was an extremely rare divine beast. Since these people had seen it, how could they give it up so easily? They used all kinds of magic treasures to track him down, persevering like sticky candy. Moreover, they would also call their friends and inform their friends in the mountains to surround and intercept them. Moreover, there were quite a number of people who came to the third peak to train. She had just shaken off one group when she encountered another. In less than half an hour, she had already been chased by 5 groups of people. There was a long trail of people behind her like ants. Seeing that there were people who came to intercept her at every intersection, Ning Shuamore knew that she could not run anymore. She had to face them. She patted Kirin's head and signaled for him to stop. Kirin had not been chased by people for more than 1,000 years. He was a little panicked. "Master, what are they doing? I already have a master. Why are they still chasing me?" Chapter 274. Why? It was nothing more than curiosity and greed. The corner of Ning Shuamore's lips lightly hooked up. "How did you deal with the embarrassing situation of being chased?" Kirin has been wandering outside for thousands of years, so he must have encountered many situations like this. The little Chileen paused for a moment. I summoned other magical beasts to block it for me." Ning Shuamore's eyes lit up. It turned out that Kirin had the ability to summon other magical beast. "Little apple, listen to my instructions later." Ning Shuamore quickly told Kirin how to escape later. Kirin nodded repeatedly. It also told Ning Shuamore about its misgivings. Their Chileen clan's summoned beasts' ranks were directly proportional to their psychokinesis. Right now, it was still a cub, so its psychokinesis wasn't that high. Therefore, it could only summon beasts that were rank 6 and below. Beasts that were rank 6 and above would at most run away when they saw it and wouldn't listen to its summons. Ning Shuamore understood. However, it was enough to summon a few magical beasts below level 6 in this place. In this short moment of delay, people from all walks of life had already caught up to them. There were more than 100 people rushing up one after another. Strange, why are there so many people in the mountain today? No wonder there is a treasure light in this mountain. It is the Kirin beast. Yes, we did not come in vain. Speaking of which, it has been a long time since a Kirin beast appeared on this continent. Where did this one come from? There is a little girl riding on the back of this Kirin beast. Who is this little girl? Is she a fairy or a demon? This Kirin beast has a master. In the blink of an eye, these people had surrounded Ning Shuamore and were discussing her without any restraint. Ning Shuamore glanced at these people's clothes. Obviously, they were from different sects. There were men and women, tall and short, fat and thin. Ning Shuamore had done quite a bit of homework in the Marquis's mansion over the past few days. She had researched the heritage of the various great sects on the continent and so on. Although it was the first time she had seen many of these people's clothes, she was not unfamiliar with them. Tempest sect, Limitless sect, 7 Stars sect, Boundless sect. There were disciples from 8 to 9 different sects, big and small. However, he didn't see any disciples of the Sun Moon sect. These people were all staring at Kirin, and the light in their eyes couldn't be concealed even if they wanted to. There was no one who didn't want to hunt an eye-catching pet. It would be dazzling and could help them level up. However, the spirit beasts in this world were not that easy to tame. To tame a spirit beast, there were two conditions. First, it had to have spiritual intelligence and be able to communicate with its master. Secondly, people who want to subdue spirit beasts need to learn a kind of pet summoning technique. This kind of technique can't be learned without rank 6 human rank or above. Not every spirit beast that had spiritual intelligence could be tamed. Most of the spirit beasts were arrogant, close to demons. Naturally, they were not willing to be controlled by people. Even if they were captured, they would rather be beaten to death than recognize a master. Therefore, if one wanted to tame them, it was impossible to rely on force alone. These spirit beasts must be truly convinced. Only then could they be used by people. Because of the harsh conditions of taming spirit beasts, although there were many magical beasts and spirit beasts on this continent, there were very few who could really tame them. As for the Kirene, it was originally an extremely rare existence. It would not appear for hundreds of years, so no one had ever tamed it. It was said that the continent's number one ancestor also had several spirit beasts, but there was no Kirene among them. Chapter 275. Now that one had finally appeared, it was being ridden by a little girl who didn't even look 12 or 13 years old. And from the looks of it, Kirene was quite obedient. What was this little girl's background? How did she do it? Countless people had the same question in their hearts. Their gazes towards Ning Xuemore were filled with envy, jealousy, and confusion. Ning Xuemore sat carefreely on Kirene's back. Under the countless gazes, her expression didn't show the slightest bit of uneasiness. She was very calm and at ease. She had already guessed most of these people's identities and was a little surprised. She thought that these disciples of various sects who appeared on the third peak wouldn't be of high status and were most likely new disciples. However, after she swept her eyes over their clothes without batting an eyelid, she realized that there were actually high-ranking people like Commander and Hall Master among them. Their positions in the sects were high, so their martial arts were naturally high as well. Their psychokinesis was at least of human level 7. With her current martial arts, she wouldn't be able to defeat even one of them if she were to fight them head-on. Moreover, there were 17 or 18 of them now. In addition to the other small fries, she definitely wouldn't be able to escape if she didn't use any special method. Treasures moved people's hearts. Once treasures were involved, even fellow disciples of the same sect might curse each other to death. Moreover, she didn't have any relationship with these people. She didn't even know them. If they were to attack her, they would have no qualms. The reason why they hadn't made a move yet was because they hadn't figured out her background yet. In addition, the others were eyeing her covetously. No one wanted to be the first to test her limits. The situation now looked peaceful, but it was actually very dangerous. If Ning Xuemore didn't handle it well, she would probably be surrounded and attacked immediately. Although Kirene could summon 6th-level magical beasts, this was the third peak. The highest-level magical beasts here were 4th level while the rest were on other peaks. Distant water couldn't quench a present thirst. She would probably have to go through a lot of trouble if she wanted to escape safely. "Little girl, which sect are you from?" Someone finally spoke. The white robe Ning Xuemore was wearing was given to her by Ju Zun. Although the material was excellent, there wasn't any symbol of a sect in the style, so they couldn't guess her identity. Her expression was too calm and her posture too relaxed. Even the experienced martial artists with a pair of sharp eyes couldn't see what was wrong with her expression. Only the truly strong would have such an aura. This little girl's face looked unfamiliar. Perhaps she was some hidden expert. Otherwise, how could she tame Kirene? Ning Xuemore's gazes tssssss, and huss. Those people were already wary of her. Now that they saw her like this, they didn't dare to act rashly. The person who asked the question was a hall master of the Fragrant Hall of the 7 Stars sect. He was intimidated by Ning Xuemore's powerful aura, so his tone became respectful instead. Yesterday, in the middle of the night, this mountain suddenly emitted a brilliance, illuminating the entire place. Our sect leader specially ordered us to come to this mountain to investigate, but unexpectedly, we met Your Excellency here. May I know who Your Excellency is? Did you just tame this Chilean beast? Ning Shuamore glanced at him again, her voice even colder. Are you going to interrogate me? Chapter 276. Her gaze was extremely sharp and her aura was as oppressive as the sea. That Xiangzhu felt a chill in his heart and could not help but take a step back. I don't dare. I know you don't dare either. Ning Shuamore's tone was cold. Benzun still has matters to attend to, I won't keep you company, she urged Kirin underneath her. Kirin understood and walked towards that Xiangzhu in large strides. It was obvious that it wanted to let him pass. Her aura was too strong right now. Nobody could figure out her depth, so nobody dared to stop her. Wherever she went, they all got out of her way. That Xiangzhu was also stunned by her. Seeing her walking towards him, he could not help but move to the side to open up a path. Ning Shuamore slowly walked past him. A faint fragrance was emitted from the young girl's body, intoxicating and mysterious. That Xiangzhu lowered his head and bowed. His expression did not change, but in the end, he was not reconciled. He wanted to test Ning Shuamore's depth. After Ning Shuamore passed by, he suddenly made his move. He raised his hand and a jet-black brilliance attacked Ning Shuamore's back. Ning Shuamore did not seem to notice. Seeing that jet-black brilliance was about to reach her back, her figure flashed and suddenly disappeared. That Xiangzhu was startled. He suddenly felt dizzy. He staggered and fell to the ground with a putong sound. Everybody was originally watching every move that was happening here closely. Ning Shuamore's every movement was seen by them. There were so many people present, but not a single person saw her figure clearly. They only saw a faint shadow flashing around that Xiangzhu. That Xiangzhu fell to the ground with a putong sound. By the time everybody came back to their senses, Ning Shuamore had already returned to Kirin's back. She continued to move forward without even looking back. Everybody was speechless. What a fast speed. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was like thunder and lightning. Just based on this kind of movement, it was enough to prove that this girl was a top expert. That Xiangzhu could be considered a well-known character on this continent. Unexpectedly, he did not even make a move before he fell to the ground. Nobody even saw how she made her move. What did this mean? An expert. An absolute expert. When did such an expert appear on this continent? They didn't even know about it. Ning Shuamore didn't look back, but she knew that she had shocked everyone. They no longer dared to act recklessly. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. She continued to walk at a leisurely pace. Incense Master, Incense Master. The disciples of the Incense Master looked at their Incense Master in panic. The Incense Master's eyes were tightly shut and his face was pale gold. His body was twitching as if he was in extreme pain. His disciples pinched his philtrum and tried all kinds of first aid, but to no avail. Everybody gathered around him, but they could not see anything. The disciples had already tested him with silver needles, but this Xiangzhu did not look like he was poisoned. Instead, he looked like he was hit by some kind of unique skill. Seeing that the Incense Master was twitching even more violently, one of the disciples was enlightened. He suddenly knelt down in front of Ning Shuamore's back. Just now, our Incense Master only wanted to test your skills. He did not have any evil intentions. We hope that Your Excellency will be magnanimous enough to forgive our Incense Master's mistake and save his life. He kowtowed repeatedly. Kirin, who was slowly moving forward, paused for a moment. Ning Shuamore's voice was indifferent and cold. If he really had evil intentions, how could he still be so angry? Forget it. Seeing that you are from a prestigious and upright sect, I will spare him this time. There will be no next time. She flicked her finger and a pale white pill flew into the disciple's hand. Give it to him. Chapter 277. The disciple was overjoyed. He did not dare to delay and quickly gave the Incense Master the medicine. Everyone raised their heads and looked at Ning Shuamore's back. Although they were unwilling, they did not dare to make any moves. However, they were unwilling to let her go like this. Ning Xuemore gently patted Kirin's horn. Kirin understood and raised its head to let out a long whistle. The whistle was clear and loud and spread far away. In a moment, all kinds of beasts roared in the surrounding forest. The trees crackled and countless beasts rushed over. Everyone was shocked. Although the level of these beasts was not high, there were many of them. Moreover, there were many kinds of beasts. Among them, there was no lack of man-eating beasts. Although there were some experts among these people, most of them were newcomers. Encountering this kind of beast tide, they were afraid that the newcomers would have an accident. Therefore, the experts of the various sects no longer cared about Ning Xuemore. They gathered the new disciples together so that it would be easier to protect them. The scene was a bit chaotic. Everyone was facing a great enemy. What they did not expect was that these beasts did not have any intention to attack them. Instead, they just clustered behind Ning Xuemore as if they were protecting her. This scene was too shocking. Everyone held their breaths as they watched the scene unfold before them. Ning Xuemore's petite figure was like a queen surrounded by the beasts. She slowly went away in front of everyone's eyes. Who is this person? I can't tell. She is dressed in white, and she is a child. Could she be the ancestors' servant? No, it can't be. I have seen the ancestors' servants' clothes. They are not like this. Then, could she be from Bright Reverence? They teach techniques to retain one's youthful appearance. This girl may not be young. Everyone was talking about it. They were desperately trying to guess Ning Xuemore's identity. However, they could not figure it out. No one had the courage to chase after her. Kai. Not far away, a chuckle suddenly came, a bunch of trash. The voice was as elegant as the sound of a zither. Everyone was startled. They raised their heads and looked towards the source of the voice. Then, they were all stunned. On a big tree not far away, there was a red-clothed, black-haired man. Under the starlight, his face was as delicate and elegant as a fairy's. His black hair and red robes fluttered in the breeze. There was a hint of enchanting in his gentleness, and there was a hint of wickedness in his enchanting. Like a gorgeous tune, it slowly unfolded in the night. He stepped on a tree branch that was not even as thick as his little finger, as if he was going to ride the wind in the night. There were so many people present, but no one knew when he had arrived. Without a doubt, this person was an expert, and it was the top-notch kind. The crowd did not know if they were lucky or unlucky. Within a single day, they had met 2 experts on the 3rd peak of the Heavenly Book Mountain. Moreover, they had never seen them before. Who are you? What was the meaning of that mocking sentence just now? There is no lack of proud and arrogant men among these people. After being humiliated like this, they naturally have to ask. If it weren't for the fact that the red-clothed man looked refined and elegant, he would have scolded him on the spot. The red-clothed man smiled. His elegant smile slowly bloomed in the night. You were actually scared by a trash little girl. If you are not trash, then what are you? Everyone, nonsense. How can she be trash? She was able to subdue the Chilean beast, defeat Incense Lord Cheng in one move, and summon 100 beasts to protect her. How can she be trash? Your words should be more reliable. Chapter 278. Yes, she is obviously a hidden master. Her movements are so fast. If she doesn't have an extremely high psychokinesis, it is impossible for her to have such good kung fu. Everyone refuted. You can choose not to believe me. The man's elegant face smiled like a spring breeze. Just don't regret it. He leaped up and disappeared from the tree. Everyone was speechless. Kirin's temptation was too great. If that girl was really a good-for-nothing, they would be scared off by her words. Everyone looked at each other. After a while, a group of people chased after Ning Xuemore. Naturally, the others did not want to fall behind. They were afraid that someone else would take the initiative, so they all chased after her. The large open space was once again deserted and cheerless. The man in red slowly appeared on the tree branch. He rubbed his chin with his jade-like hand and looked in the direction Ning Xuemore had gone. Little girl, you have to pay the price for scheming against me. How would she deal with the crisis this time? His pair of dark green eyes flashed with anticipation. At this moment, Ning Xuemore rode Kirin over the third peak and headed to the second peak. Master, you are so cool. Kirin was excited when she recalled the scene just now. You defeated that old man with one move. How did you do it? Ning Xuemore was silent for a moment. Cough, I poisoned him just now. Ah. You didn't do it. Ning Xuemore coughed again and said honestly, if we really fought, I couldn't defeat him. Kirin. But he didn't look like he was poisoned. I saw that they also tested it with silver needles. If it was a poison that could be detected by anyone, how could I scare them off? Ning Xuemore smiled and patted Kirin's head. The move I used just now has a phrase in Sun Tzu's Art of War. It is called the empty fort strategy. Sun Tzu's Art of War? If Sun Tzu's Art of War is so powerful, then my Art of War must be even more powerful. Master, you should use my Art of War. Although Kirin did not understand half of it, he still suggested excitedly. The corners of Ning Xuemore's eyes twitched. I've never written about the Art of War. He only wrote about the Tao Te Ching. Sun Tzu is an honorific. That person was actually called Sun Wu. Ning Xuemore began to teach Kirin about the history of her era. The situation just now was extremely dangerous. First, she used her unfathomable and lofty aura to suppress them, and then when she passed by that Xiangzhu, she released a kind of poisonous powder. This kind of poisonous powder had a serene and elegant aroma. If one only smelled this kind of powder, it would not be poisonous, it was harmless to the human body. After that, she took advantage of the time when the incense master was about to make a move. She used her peerless Qinggong and her strange footwork to fly in front of the incense master. Then, in a flash, she used another kind of poison on him. When the two poisons were combined, the poison immediately took effect. It knocked down that arrogant incense master and successfully shocked everyone. Then, she let Kirin summon all kinds of fierce beasts to protect her. She appeared even more mysterious and inviolable, making everyone lose the courage to chase after her. To put it bluntly, she had relied on her disgusting poison skills, top-notch Qinggong, and unique footwork to create an extremely powerful illusion. She had managed to scare everyone so that she could get out of this predicament. It was similar to Zhuge Liang's empty fort strategy. At that time, she did not show it on her face, but her palms were sweating because of nervousness. Now, her inner force was quite strong, but her psychokinesis was still ordinary. She could only use her Qinggong. If she did not use this method, she would not have been able to escape today. Chapter 279. She was dealing with a group of people, but it was much more dangerous than dealing with a group of ferocious beasts. Fortunately, she was finally out of danger. As long as she was given another 2 hours, she would be able to return to her Marquis Jingyuan's mansion, eat the delicious food prepared by the chef, climb into her own big soft bed, and have a good night's sleep. She believed that this time, all of her servants would definitely be present. This adventure could be considered to have come to a successful end. Her eyelashes curved slightly, and just as she was about to smile, she suddenly sensed something and her expression changed. Someone is chasing after us. Kirin was stunned. How do you know? It did not even hear the cries of the birds in the surrounding forest. Be careful, underground. Ning Xuemore shouted softly. Before her voice died away, rows of sharp stone spikes suddenly stood up from the ground that was full of fallen leaves. At the same time, countless green leaves flew towards the woman and the beast like green arrows. Ning Xuemore's upper and lower paths were sealed in an instant. Ning Xuemore did not have any weapons in her hands, but fortunately, she was playing with a branch. Seeing that the situation was not good, she waved the branch in her palm. Kirin let out a long howl, opened its mouth, and a blue wave swept across the ground. Wherever the blue wave passed, the sharp stone spikes were broken into pieces and turned into powder. Although Ning Xuemore used all her strength to sweep away the flying leaves, the force contained in the leaves was too great. Obviously, it was sent by a master. Ning Xuemore's arm was shaken until it was numb and painful. The branch that was as thick as a thumb was cut into a small section. The back of her hand was also cut by a leaf, and there was a bloody wound. Blood was flowing out. Ha ha ha, you were just bluffing. This old man almost fell for your trick. A group of people who seemed to have rushed over from the ground came out from the soft ground and landed in front of Ning Xuemore. Yes, we were all fooled. This little girl is just SOSO. A group of people also flew down from the surrounding trees. Her psychokinesis is at most level 3. Her footwork is a little strange, but there is nothing else. Another group of people came out from behind the mountain rocks. Groups after groups of people came out with all kinds of tricks, surrounding Ning Xuemore in the middle like an iron bucket. Suddenly, Ning Xuemore couldn't escape. How can such a person be the Qilin master? That's right. She must have gotten lucky and tricked Kirin. Little girl, who are you? I shouldn't have deceived so many seniors. If you know what's good for you, then hand over Kirin. A divine beast should be owned by someone with talent and virtue. Not bad, not bad. It's a waste for a little girl like you to have it. Everyone was shouting and yelling. They all wanted Ning Xuemore to hand over the Kirin. Ning Xuemore took a deep breath. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly heard the sound of wings flapping above her head. A cold and crisp voice sounded faintly. How is her psychokinesis low? She's just a psychokinesis trash. Ning Xuemore, so this is where you are. Ning Xuemore raised her eyebrows and looked up. A red-crowned crane flew over at a low altitude. Before it landed, a young girl jumped down from the crane and landed on the ground. She had phoenix eyes, cherry lips, and the majesty of the imperial family in her coldness. It was the princess of Vast Sky Empire, Ji Yunyao. Ji Yunyao was a high-profile person. She was a noble princess and the disciple of the Storm Sect's sect master. Most of the people here knew her. Those who knew her greeted her one after another. The disciples of the Storm Sect even went forward to greet her. Chapter 280. Although these sects were usually not under the control of the imperial family, all under the heavens belonged to the imperial family. The sects in Changkong country naturally did not want to offend the imperial family, but the sects from other countries naturally had some misgivings in other people's territory, so they still gave face to this princess. Even if they did not like her, they still kept a respectful distance and tried their best not to provoke her. When Ji Yunyao arrived, she exposed Ning Xuemore's identity, so everyone naturally asked about it. Ji Yunyao was naturally happy to dispel everyone's doubts, so she said with disdain, "She's that super trash miss from Marquis Jingyuan's estate. She doesn't even have a bit of psychokinesis, because it was hard for a real trash to appear on this continent." Ning Xuemore's super trash reputation was very widespread. Almost everyone present had heard of her. Of course, she was recently locked in an iron cage, her engagement with the 6th prince was annulled, and Le Hin Thai proposed marriage, but she was kidnapped. These matters were also spread all over the city. These people had recently been active in Changkong country, so they naturally heard about these matters. There were all kinds of pleasant to hear and unpleasant to hear. When these people heard it at that time, they only treated it as a kind of after-dinner entertainment. They didn't expect that the little lass who rode on the little Qilin and almost coaxed them into running around in circles was actually the continent's #1 trash. My imperial father originally took special care of her for the sake of the dead Marquis Ning. Seeing that she was pitiful, he did not care about her bad reputation and wanted to take her as his concubine. Who would have thought that she actually did not know what was good for her and ran here? Ji Yunyao continued to gossip, her eyes flashing with resentment. Wasn't she kidnapped? Someone questioned. Look at her appearance and the clothes she's wearing now, it's obvious that she eloped with someone. This robe is a man's robe. That's right, she must have eloped with her adulterer. Aya, she doesn't seem to be wearing pants. It's indecent. Someone yelled. Although Ning Xuemore was wearing a robe, she only wore a pair of briefs inside. She was also riding on Kirin's back, so the robe was slightly flipped up, revealing her white calf. When people saw it, they immediately called it out as evidence. Too shameless. So embarrassing. I'm so embarrassed for her. All kinds of discussions were like a basin of dirty water, splashing Ning Xuemore without any scruples. Countless gazes fell on Ning Xuemore. Their gazes were filled with disdain as they commented on her. Most of the people who made these comments were girls. After all, when Ning Xuemore rode on the little Cheline, she was in the limelight. That cool appearance of hers had subdued many people, making her the focus of attention. Naturally, it also attracted the jealousy of many girls present. Originally, they didn't know about Ning Xuemore's background, so they were a little hesitant and uncertain. Now that she finally had the chance, she couldn't help but speak harshly. She couldn't wait to step on her a few more times. Ning Xuemore smiled. These filthy words might be very hurtful to other girls, and they might not be able to accept it. But to her, this baptism of saliva was no different from tickling. Some things were fine as long as he had a clear conscience. Everything else was up to him. Her gaze fell on Ji Yunyao's face, and Ji Yunyao also looked at her with awe-inspiring righteousness, as if she was looking at a piece of trash. This princess's jealousy was really perverted. Nothing had happened between her and that crown prince, but she had already attracted such a vicious revenge. Since she didn't give her face, then why should she give her face? Did she really think that she was afraid of her? Chapter 281. So it's Princess Yunyao. Why didn't the princess think of a way to stay by your brother Crown Prince's side? Why did you come to Tianshu Mountain? Ning Xuemore opened her mouth. Her voice was clear and melodious, but her words were profound and caused people to think. Ji Yunyao was stunned. A thief would always have a guilty conscience, not to mention that she wasn't a very calm person. Ning Xuemore's light words poked at her sensitive spot. Her expression changed and she angrily said, "What nonsense are you talking about? How could I think of a way to stay by brother Crown Prince's side? We're siblings." Didn't I say you're not siblings? Why is Princess Yunyao so anxious? Could it be that you have a guilty conscience? Ning Xuemore blinked. You. Ji Yunyao's face turned even redder. Bastard. When did I have a guilty conscience? Brother Yunhuang and I are innocent. We're siblings, biological siblings. What's wrong with us being close? There's indeed nothing wrong with biological siblings being close. Ning Xuemore dragged her voice. However, looking at the princess's usual behavior, I thought you were foster siblings. It seems that I misunderstood. However, the princess's behavior really makes people think. Her words had a double meaning, and each sentence had a meaning. Most of the people present were young men and women. People of this age group were always sensitive to emotional gossip. Ning Xuemore's words were like a shot of stimulant, instantly lighting up everyone's gossiping factor. It was unknown how many bright eyes fell on Ji Yunyao. Biological sister and biological brother having an affair. It couldn't be, right? Ji Yunyao clenched her fists tightly. She felt that she had always hidden her thoughts very well. How could she be seen through by this little brat in front of her? Just now, when she splashed dirty water on Ning Xuemore, she felt incomparably happy. Now, this basin of water was splashed back on her. Under everyone's subtle gazes, her charming face turned redder and redder, almost turning purple. You slut, you're full of nonsense. What behavior did I do that made people think too much? If you don't say something today, I won't let you go. Ning Xuemore raised her lips and smiled. You still remember Lesusu, right? Ji Yunyao's expression changed again. She naturally remembered Lesusu. Lesusu was once her good friend. She wanted to befriend her, but the purpose of befriending her was not simple. She just wanted to get to know her crown prince brother through her. Every time she talked about her brother, the crown prince, her eyes would light up and she would talk non-stop. This made her extremely unhappy, but she couldn't do anything about it. Later on, this girl even shamelessly confessed her love to her crown prince. However, her crown prince didn't reject her as he did to other girls. He even smiled and sent her away. After chatting with Lesusu for a while, he even sent Lesusu back home for the first time. This made Ji Yunyao go crazy with jealousy. She finally wanted to kill Lesusu. She casually found a reason to throw Lesusu into the Ministry of Justice's prison and handed her over to Tu Yidao. This matter of hers was done in secret. It could be said that no one knew about it. She didn't expect Ning Shuamore to suddenly mention her at this time. In the end, Ji Yunyao had a guilty conscience. Her face was slightly pale. Before she could say anything, a youngster beside her interrupted. Lasusu? Are you talking about my Heavenly Star Sect's flying dragon girl, Lasusu? Ning Shuamore glanced at the youngster. I don't know her nickname, but I heard that she's the disciple of the Heavenly Star Sect's second guardian. Ah, that's right. She's my senior martial sister. Where is she now? Chapter 282. She has already been missing for several days. Do you know where she is? The youth's tone became more and more anxious. Ning Shuamore glanced at Ji Yunyao. I think this Princess Yunyao knows her whereabouts. Don't you think so? Princess Yunyao? Ji Yunyao's face turned pale. She wanted to deny it, but she didn't know what to say. The youth seemed to have sensed that something was wrong and hurriedly said, no matter which of you knows, please tell me. My master has already sent people to look for her for several days. Ning Shuamore lightly said, she was sent to the Ministry of Justice's prison by this princess. She was charged with stealing the princess's things. The youth's face changed. Impossible. My senior sister has always been open and above board. She would never steal other people's things. This must be a false accusation. His gaze was sharp as he looked at Ji Yunyao. Princess Yunyao, is what she said true? Ji Yunyao choked. This, Ning Shuamore said from the side, this matter can't be concealed. The Heavenly Star Sect only needs to send people to the Ministry of Justice's prison to investigate and they will know. Ji Yunyao also knew that she couldn't fool them. She could only harden her heart and say, she entered the palace to steal my jade silk vest. I really did send the Ministry of Justice to investigate this matter. Impossible. The youth's handsome face turned red. My senior sister has her own mermaid silk jade clothes. Isn't it much better than the jade silk vest? How could she steal from you? There must be something fishy about this matter. I will go back to report to my master. Someone will go to the Ministry of Justice to investigate this matter and return my senior sister's innocence. Miss Ning, is my senior sister still in prison? She didn't receive any punishment, right? Ning Shuamore slightly sighed. She is no longer in prison. At that time, the princess handed her over to Tu Yidao. The youth's face completely changed. He had heard of Tu Yidao's reputation in the Ministry of Justice's prison. That was a living king of hell. His senior sister had actually fallen into his hands. Then, the youth almost didn't dare to think about it. After pausing, he gritted his teeth and said, how does Miss Ning know that my senior sister has fallen into his hands? If she isn't in prison, where is she? In a few words, Ning Shuamore explained that she had been wrongly accused and had also been sent to the Ministry of Justice's prison. Coincidentally, she happened to witness Tu Yidao's execution of Lasusu. Naturally, she also mentioned Lasusu's final ending. The young man's face was deathly pale. He gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, Princess, what do you have to say? This time, there were quite a few disciples from the Heavenly Star Sect, and they were all standing behind the young man. Lasusu's prestige in the sect was not low. When these people heard that she had fallen into such a miserable state, naturally they were all angry. Countless burning eyes stared at Ji Yunyao, waiting for her to give an explanation. Ji Yunyao wanted to cut Ning Shuamore into pieces. At this time, she could only evade. Don't listen to her nonsense. I only ordered the Ministry of Justice to investigate this case. I don't know what happened after that. You don't know? Ning Shuamore sneered. I personally heard Tu Yidao say that the princess personally handed her over to him. He even said that no matter what, she had to confess. That was why Tu Yidao was so unscrupulous in torturing her. Why? The princess used to be my senior sister's good friend. Why did she frame her like this? Why did she want to take her life? The youth's eyes were about to spit fire. Because she likes Ji Yunhuang. Ning Shuamore exposed the truth and sneered slightly. The princess doesn't allow any woman to like Crown Prince Yunhuang. When I was sent to prison, it was because Crown Prince Yunhuang treated me slightly better, which made her want to kill me. Chapter 283. Crown Prince Yunhuang only has true sibling affection for her, but her feelings for Crown Prince Yunhuang are nonsense. Nonsense. You're talking nonsense. Ji Yunyao's face turned green and white. She stole my things. The youth clenched his fists. This is a serious matter. Our Heavenly Star sect will thoroughly investigate this matter. We will return my senior sister's innocence and seek justice. Let's go. That youth was clearly the leader of this group of Heavenly Star sect disciples. When he turned around, the other Heavenly Star sect disciples also followed him. The remaining people looked at each other in dismay and then looked at Ji Yunyaro one after another. No matter what era, siblings having an incestuous love would be despised by others. Just now, Ning Shuamore and Ji Yunyao's battle of words had made everyone understand the cause of this matter. No one knew whether Ji Yunhuang had that kind of feelings for this sister, but this princess who had always been noble and virtuous indeed had a perverted love for her brother. Ji Yunyaro knew that although it was impossible to determine the truth of this matter, her feelings had been mercilessly exposed by Ning Shuamore. From today onwards, her reputation would be thoroughly tarnished. Her reputation would be worse than Ning Shuamore, this trash. And the rumors would be even worse. What's more, as long as the Heavenly Star sect got involved in this matter, it would inevitably be revealed to the world. At that time, her reputation would be even worse. Those who humiliated others would be humiliated. Ning Shuamore coldly looked at her. Bullying her would have to pay the price. She had given this woman a chance, but she was blind and insisted on provoking her. I'll kill you, this slut who is full of nonsense. Ji Yunyaro was thoroughly enraged. Her figure rose up and a light green blade flashed in her hand. The wind was like a wave as it swept towards Ning Shuamore's waist. She could also be considered a genius. Her psychokinesis cultivation had already reached the 6th level. This move was launched by her with anger, so its power was exceptionally great. Just as she made her move, countless astral winds whistled and flew towards Ning Shuamore. Everyone looked at each other and tacitly retreated, making an open space for them to fight. These people also had different thoughts. Some of them were just here to watch the show, while others didn't want to offend the royal princess. Of course, they didn't want to help her either. More importantly, they could take the opportunity to see how good Ning Shuamore's kung fu was. He could also figure out how to seize Karine. No matter which side of the two girls lost, it would be beneficial for them. They were happy to sit back and reap the benefits. Fortunately, Ning Shuamore was prepared for it. She didn't panic when she was attacked, and calmly fought back. Ji Yunyao's martial arts skills were indeed not low, and her techniques were also very powerful. Every move she made was full of grace, and her movements were as light as a fairy's. On the other hand, Ning Shuamore's psychokinesis was not as good as her, but she had extraordinary inner strength. Moreover, her combat experience was extraordinarily rich. Her movements were clean and neat, strange and changeable, and her moves were often unexpected. When she started to fight with Ji Yunyaro, she was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, she was mostly on the defensive. After more than 10 moves, she figured out her opponent's martial arts style and quickly found the flaws in his moves. She sneered in her heart. This Ji Yunyaro was extremely vain. When she was fighting, she always paid attention to her posture. Her moves were beautiful, but there were obvious flaws in them. As long as she met a real expert, she would be defeated. Ning Shuamore didn't care too much about incestuous love, but this woman had provoked her, so don't blame her for being impolite. As soon as she counterattacked, Ji Yunyaro was immediately forced into a fluster, unable to attend to the end. Chapter 284. The onlookers were watching from outside the circle. Ning Shuamore's moves were beyond their expectations. This girl's telekinesis was not high. Or rather, she wasn't using telekinesis at all. She was using another mysterious force. She was flying and her movements were as fast as lightning. She didn't have a weapon in her hand, but when she made her moves, the sound of the wind was sharp and ear-piercing. Her movements were so fast that not many people present could clearly see the changes in her movements. They could only see a white shadow with continuous afterimages, circling around Ji Yunyaro and circling around her. Everyone was shocked. What kind of martial arts was this girl practicing? They had never seen it before. A good-for-nothing in telekinesis had forced a master of the 6th rank into a corner and put him in danger several times. How was she a good-for-nothing? How could a good-for-nothing have such good martial arts? Also, what kind of footwork was her footwork? Natural and smooth. Unfathomable. At first, the onlookers were only paying attention to the fight between the two. Later, more and more people were looking at Ning Xuemore. Most of the onlookers were martial arts fanatics. Naturally, they were curious to see martial arts that they had never seen before. They were so engrossed in the fight that they even forgot their initial goal. Kirine was standing on the side, watching the white figure in the fight. Its big eyes were filled with pride. That was its master. No matter what difficulties she encountered, she would never back down. She would never suffer losses, and she was cruel to those who insulted her. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. It liked it. Seeing that Ji Yunyaro was forced to step back, Kirine's blood was boiling. It couldn't help but shout, "Master, come on, beat this shameless woman to death." As soon as it spoke, everyone was stunned. They knew that pets of the highest rank could communicate with their masters. But they didn't know that this Kirine could speak. No wonder it was a legendary mythical creature. What did it call that girl? Master. It seemed that only pets with blood contracts would call their masters. The others would just call them yes. This little girl had established a blood contract with Kirine. That was impossible. In this world, a written contract would be established when a pet was tamed, written in a special kind of ink. Once the contract was established, the pet would act according to its master's orders, but it would not live and die with its master. If the master unfortunately died, then the pet could establish a contract with someone else, but blood contracts were a legendary existence. Only those whose mental power had reached heaven rank 1 could establish a blood contract with their master. From then on, the master and the pet would live and die together. If the master died, the pet would die. When everyone saw Ning Xuemore riding Kirine for the first time and saw that Kirine was obedient to her, they thought that they had established a written contract between them, which was why they were trying to obtain it. At first, they only had 2 plans. If Ning Xuemore was sensible enough to give up Kirine and cancel the written contract, they wouldn't kill her. After all, they were from a prestigious family. Killing a little girl and ruining their reputation wasn't worth it. If Ning Xuemore didn't know what was good for her, then they would find a legitimate reason to kill her. That would mean that the contract between her and Kirine would be nullified. Kirine could still establish a contract with the stronger ones among them, but now, it seemed that both of these possibilities were gone. Even if they could kill this little girl, Kirine wouldn't be able to live. Once a blood contract was established, it was close to impossible to cancel it. Unless they were also experts with heaven-rank mental power and used the same method to cancel the blood contract, it was impossible to do so. Chapter 285. And as far as they know, on this continent, there is only one person who has reached the heaven rank. The Overlord. The Overlord actually helped this trash little girl? Is it possible? Some people didn't give up and couldn't help but ask Kirine, mythological beast Kirine, can you understand human language? What kind of contract did you establish with this little girl? That, a written contract doesn't require you to call her master. Kirine rolled its eyes at the man. It can speak human language, how can it not understand human language? Idiot. Shut your beak. How can I, a mythological beast, not understand human language? Let me tell you, I established a blood contract with my master. Do you know what a blood contract is? Ignorant. Everyone. They were shocked. It really is a blood contract. Then what is the relationship between this little girl and the Overlord? Everyone vaguely remembered a legend about Ning Xuemore. It seems that when she was locked in the iron cage and was almost executed, it was the Overlord who sent a boy to uphold justice for her. This trash little girl actually received the Overlord's favor? Or is it that another heaven rank master has appeared on this continent? Everyone thought of the man in red who suddenly appeared. Although they didn't fight with him, they felt an inexplicably strong pressure from him, which made them instantly keep quiet out of fear. Even after being insulted by his words, they didn't dare to act rashly. Mythological beast Kirin, who helped you establish the contract with your master. Someone wanted to take advantage of Kirin's naive and ignorant look and wanted to dig out the truth from its mouth. Who knew that Kirin rolled its eyes and coolly replied, "Who do you think you are? Why should this mythological beast tell you? No matter who it is, you bunch of common people have no right to know." Everyone. They could only shut up. They were doomed to not get the mythological beast Kirin. If they could get this little girl and recruit her into their sect, wouldn't that be the same as recruiting the mythological beast? But they didn't know if this little girl had a sect or not, so they began to ask Kirin about Ning Shuamor's sect. However, Kirin looked ignorant and tight-lipped and didn't answer their questions at all. Wait for Master to deal with that crazy princess. You can go and ask her yourselves. Miss Ning, do you want to join our Limitless sect? Our Limitless sect can be said to be the third largest sect on the continent. Some people were impatient and started to recruit. When one person spoke, the others naturally did not want to be left behind. The leaders of the various sects all spoke up one after another. Miss Ning, don't listen to his nonsense. The Limitless sect is not the third largest sect. Our Storm sect is. If you join our Wind Cloud sect, this protector will make the decision to let you become an inner sect disciple. This is a rare opportunity. You have to seize it. What a joke. How can the Tempest sect be the third major sect? A scholarly-looking person spoke and said proudly, "Our Boundless sect is the third major sect. Lady Ning, you should join our Boundless sect. This elder will personally take you in. Our Limitless sect is the third largest sect. Our Wind Cloud sect is." Who in the pugilistic world doesn't know that our Boundless sect is publicly recognized as the third strongest sect? Aren't you afraid that you'll bite your tongue if you say that? In order to recruit Ning Shuamor, these people each pulled the other's leg and showed off their own sect's prestige. They fought for the title of the third largest sect until their faces and ears turned red. In the end, they stretched out their arms and rolled up their sleeves as if they wanted to fight. Chapter 286. Ning Shuamor pretended that she didn't hear their argument. She didn't need to think to understand why these people wanted to take her in. It was nothing more than taking a liking to her Kirin. As for her, she was probably just an accessory, a free gift. Ji Yunyaro was even angrier. The lowly girl in front of her was obviously a good-for-nothing. She shouldn't even care about dogs, but these sects were actually fighting over her like dogs fighting over a bone. What's more, there was even her own sect's leading senior among them. This made her lose face even more, and the hatred in her heart surged like the waves of the sea. Lowly girl, don't be so smug. They're only fighting over your Kirin. They can't be bothered with a good-for-nothing like you. In the midst of the fight, she couldn't help but mock. Noble princess, I think they're definitely very willing to recruit you. After all, there aren't many people in this world who are infatuated with their own brother. Ning Shuamor replied with a smile. Her ability to insult others was not inferior to others. Ji Yunyao's sore spot was stepped on again and again, and she was simply mad with anger. Her moves were even more ruthless, and she couldn't wait to cut Ning Shuamor into pieces with one move. She originally wanted to provoke Ning Shuamor into being distracted, but she didn't expect that Ning Shuamor would provoke her to be even more irritated. In a fight, the worst thing to do was to have an unstable state of mind. Ji Yunyao's mind wandered for a moment, allowing Ning Shuamor to find an opening and directly barge in. With a beautiful empty-handed grab, Ji Yunyao's sword was snatched away by Ning Shuamor. She was shocked and hurriedly retreated. Ning Shuamor sneered and turned her long sword in a circle, slashing towards her head. Her footwork was like the wind, and Ji Yunyaro couldn't dodge at all. Her expression changed and she screamed, "You can't kill me. If you kill me, even Brother Crown Prince won't let you off." Pa. Ning Shuamor's sword slashed diagonally onto her pretty face. Ji Yunyao's face suddenly hurt, and she thought that her face was split into two. She was so frightened that she screamed again, and her body flew backwards like a hawk. Even if I kill you, he won't do anything to me. Ning Xuemore took a step forward and continued to approach her. You have such dirty thoughts about him. He will be ashamed of you. This princess's desire for revenge and jealousy could already be described as perverted. She had to teach this kind of woman a lesson so that she would be frightened for the rest of her life. Ji Yunyao's mouth was filled with blood. Half of her face was numb and painful. Her entire life had been smooth sailing. Because of her status as a princess, everyone treated her with respect and courtesy. No one had ever really disobeyed her. This had nurtured her arrogant and despotic temperament. If things didn't go as he wished, he would beat and scold others. She had never suffered such a huge loss before. At this moment, seeing Ning Xuemore pouncing on her again, obviously unwilling to let her go, she was shocked, angry, and finally scared. This little girl whom she had always looked down on was actually not someone to be trifled with. At this moment, he was like the god of death, closing in step by step. Ji Yunyao, I'll make you regret provoking me. Ji Yunyao was intimidated by her fierce aura and desperately retreated in fear. You can't. You wouldn't dare. Why can't I? Ji Yunyao, I didn't want to lower myself to your level, but you're the one who asked for it. Ning Xuemore's figure flashed, and the sword in her palm shot out towards her neck. Ji Yunyao was almost scared out of her wits. She regretted it. She really regretted it. She regretted provoking this little devil. She hurriedly dodged again. Ning Xuemore's movements were like lightning, and the sword's light circled around her. Chapter 287. Ning Xuemore's movements were as fast as lightning, and the sword's light circled around her. In just a moment, Ji Yunyao's clothes were torn, her skirt was shortened, and her face was slapped by the sword. They were red and hot, and it was unknown if they were disfigured. At first, Ji Yunyao was still cursing endlessly, but later on, she could no longer be firm. When Ning Xuemore's sword pierced through her ribs, her sleeves were cut in half, and a piece of her flesh was also cut off. She finally began to collapse. Okay, I was wrong. Now you know that you were wrong. It's too late. Ning Xuemore's wrist turned, and the sword's light slanted and rushed towards her left shoulder. Ning Xuemore actually did not want to take Ji Yunyao's life. After all, this girl was Ji Yunhuang's biological sister. If she killed her, it would be difficult to explain to Ji Yunhuang. After all, Ji Yunhuang treated her very well, so she had to give him face. However, she also had to teach this princess a lesson. Only this way, this princess would remember it for the rest of her life and not dare to cause trouble again. Stop. Suddenly, a voice came from afar. Following the voice, a faint blue light with a sharp whistling sound rushed towards Ning Xuemore's chest. When Ning Xuemore heard that shout, her heart skipped a beat. When she saw the blue light in front of her, her expression changed slightly. In her hurry, she did not care about hurting Ji Yunyao anymore. She pulled back her sword to defend herself against the blue light. Bang! With a loud sound, the blue light collided with her treasured sword. Ning Xuemore's wrist went numb, and the sword in her hand flew out, flying straight to the sky. Ning Xuemore was originally standing on top of a bluestone, but when she was hit by the blue light, her footing became unstable. She stumbled and retreated a few steps before steadying herself. Her ankle was burning with pain. She sprained her ankle. Ning Xuemore slowly raised her head and saw a white-clothed man jumping down from a golden-eyed eagle. Brother! Ji Yunyao looked as if she had seen her savior. She cried out in joy and directly threw herself into the white-clothed man's embrace. The white-clothed man was handsome and tall. Among the group of handsome men and beautiful women, he was also incomparably handsome and calm. Ji Yunhuang. It was actually Ji Yunhuang. Brother. This slut bullied me. Woo-woo, I don't want to live anymore. Ji Yunyao tightly hugged his waist, crying like a person. Her face was still red and swollen, and one of her front teeth were also broken. Ji Yunhuang looked at his sister in his embrace. He had never seen his sister in such a sorry state before. His body was covered in spots of blood, and his clothes had been shredded to the point that he looked like he was wearing rags. His skin was exposed in many places. He subconsciously took off his outer robe and wrapped it around Ji Yunyao. He looked at Ning Xuemo, who was standing there, and then looked at Ji Yunyao, who was in his embrace. He furrowed his brows. What exactly happened? Now that Ji Yunyao had someone to rely on, she felt more confident and immediately cried, "Brother, I was looking for her whereabouts for you. It was not easy for me to find her here. When I saw her, I liked her very much. When I saw that she seemed to have some misunderstanding with these people, I told them her identity. Who would have thought that she would fly into a rage out of humiliation? She actually insulted our reputations like a madwoman, saying that we said that we were unbearable. I was so angry that I wanted to teach her a lesson. I wanted to teach her a lesson and let her know when to back off. She actually used underhanded tricks on me. Brother, you have to help me." Her words seemed to be right but were actually wrong. She completely distorted the truth. Ji Yunhuang's gaze fell on Ning Xuemo, and his complexion was not good. "Xuemo, is this true? You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.